Hello, everyone. We are live. Let me know if you have my audio. We're going to be answering Patreon questions. We have a couple of them here. We have a lot. Yep. I'm actually going to try to go through them and within an hour and a half. Hopefully, I'll get to finish them. And then after I answer Patreon questions, I'm going to post a link to YouTube members, and YouTube members can come up and ask their questions live or talk to me live on air. So, again, if you're a patron, you get to post your questions on Patreon every week before the show, and then I answer the Patreon questions. Okay, so we usually post a link to this live stream, to the Q&A, a day ahead of the live stream, and then you send us your questions as a comment under the Patreon post. I answer them, and after that, YouTube members get to come up and talk to me live on it. Okay, I got a confirmation that the audio is good. Hi, Secularity. Hi, D. Anyways, Susie can't be here today, but hopefully she'll be here next week. But I should be able to answer some of these questions. Hold on, let me see. I have a lot. There's some that I know more about, some I don't know much about. So we have to read it together. Let's go with the one that I don't know much about. Okay, I have no idea what this is. All right, but we can learn together. Okay. Secular Art saying, what are your thoughts on the, oh yeah, I know, but the NSO group's hacking tool known as Pegasus potentially being sold to a U.S. defense contractor? Okay, so I know a little bit about Pegasus, but I don't know about this thing that you're talking about. So let's figure this out together. Hold on, let me put this over here. Entire screen, share. Let's see what we're looking at. All right, so U.S. defense contractor in talks to take over NSO Group's hacking technology. Okay, I don't understand. This is supposed to be an evil thing. Why is U.S. defense contractors now using it? So I don't know if this is Pegasus. Like U.S. defense contractors are going to use. Okay, let me actually read before judging. The U.S. defense contractor L3 Harris is in talks to take over NSO's group surveillance technology in a possible deal that would give an American company control over one of the world's most sophisticated and controversial hacking tools. Okay, this is dangerous. Guys, we're all screwed. Nothing that you have now is safe. Nothing is private anymore. Multiple sources confirmed that discussions were centered on the sale of the Israeli company's core technology or code, as well as possible transfer of the NSO. Why are they okay? So this is Pegasus. They're not mentioning it, right? Transfer of NSO personnel to L3 Harris, but any agreement still faces significant. Guys, I thought this was like an illegal thing. Anybody who worked with this Israeli company would have been like blacklisted. Now, like U.S. defense contractor has access to so we're just normalizing this, right? I don't understand. Like now, all our phones are completely transparently available to everybody. Guys, everything you type, everything you send, apparently now everyone could see. Like somebody's within the. If you think I'm naive and it was always like this, no, it was not always like this. This is so transparently now. Everything is available to everybody. So Secularity in the live chat is saying yes. I think specifically calls out Pegasus later on the article. Okay. Okay, but any agreement, how is this legal? But any agreement still faces significant hurdles, including requiring the blessing of the U.S. and Israeli government, which have not yet given the green light to a deal. Well, they shouldn't. Oh my God. In a statement, a senior White House official says such a transition, if it were to take place, raises serious counterintelligence and security concerns for the U.S. government. Hey, guys, so this is, by the way, when you say a U.S. defense contractor, we're talking about the private sector. So this is not even the government, okay? The private sector now has access to a technology where nobody, not even the government, should have access to. I know this story was jointly reported by The Guardian, The Washington Post, and Haaretz. Is that how you read that? If I agreed the deal would mark an astonishing turnaround for NSO less than a year after the Biden administration's placed the... See, I was right. I knew my stuff. Okay, I knew about this. So everything has... So the Biden administration placed the company on the blacklist But now it has been so normalized that like, hey, Daddy Biden, can we actually buy this for a U.S. company, not just an Israeli company? God damn! And accused it of acting contrary to the foreign policy and national security interests of the United States. What about the people? Guys, like, and this is the normalization of your data being accessible to anybody that can afford technology like this. How is this okay? How is this like being so? People are not even hiding this anymore. Like, this just like, okay, yeah, we're doing this. Like, nobody gives a crap. Like, this is normal. This should be illegal. NSO's government clients are known to have used the surveillance technology to target journalists, human rights activists, senior government officials. Like, guys, this technology is becoming everywhere. Like, now people are just selling it left and right. Eventually, some people will just copy the code illegally, and everybody's information will be available to anybody that has access to this code. Okay? Just remember, everything you're writing is potentially. But how could human rights activists do what they're doing now? If this is the case, senior government officials in the U.S., allied countries, and lawyers around the world. Yeah, this is the journalists and human rights activists are the main groups that I'm concerned about. They everything now, all their communications. Like, imagine, for example, an Iranian human rights activist. If eventually the Iranian government has access to this technology, like if they want to like communicate with people outside of Iran to send their messages out, like, well, okay, everything on your phone is now accessible to whoever can hack your phone, and now everybody who you contacted, now the Iranian government could see all the people you've contacted as well, and they're also going to be at risk as well. Anyways, this is so stupid. Where's Pegasus? I'm not going to read the rest of this because it's going to take a while. Oh, look at this. Yeah. NSO, which is being sued by Apple and WhatsApp in U.S. court, has in the past said it takes all allegations of abuse of its tools. Okay, no, never mind. I'm not going to read the rest of this. It's going to take a while. This is just scary. Oh, yeah, Pegasus. Here. The Guardian and other media outlets have also detailed how NSO surveillance technology, Pegasus, has been used by company government clients to target American citizens. Okay. Anyways, okay, so the question is, what are your thoughts on this? I am scared out of yeah, I'm scared shitless. Okay, that's my response to this. Oxymoron in the live chat is saying governments should be able to get access to this stuff. Private companies, no. I don't know if governments should be able to get. I like your private. I mean, this government shouldn't be able to just like willy nilly. Like, you okay? Back when we didn't have these stuffs, okay. Like, for example, your house used to be a private area, and even the government coming in, they needed like a permission from a judge. Like, they needed a warrant, right? So there's certain things that are private to an individual, and you need specific you needed permission. You can't just like walk in, right? We like I'm pretty sure if even governments have access to this information, they're gonna just use it on our private lives without anyone's permission. Norse mythology in the live chat is saying this is why democracy is so important. If you live in an autocracy or dictatorship, then you're in deep. Well, I mean, this is the U.S. They're supposed to be democracy. Oxymoron saying yes, government should take data, but government. I don't know. I don't understand what you're saying there. All right, let me go to the next question. Anyways, okay, U.S. defense contractor, that's a private sector, so that's dangerous. This should be illegal. This should not be in guerrilla. This shouldn't even be discussed. Like, this should be like your company is blacklisted by United States if you even touch stuff like this. The problem is that these companies, right? Um, they they themselves are like, we're not using it for evil, but then they sell it to people, and they're like, well, they're using it for in a way that we didn't tell them to. Like, so you can't come after us. We just gave them the technology. So technically, they're right. So you can't really go after them that way. Yeah, I guess like okay, so fine. I guess like you're right. Oxymoron is saying for monitoring terrorism and stuff like that, but the problem is that the government. Yeah, so you're saying the government needs access to technology like this for monitoring terrorism and stuff like that. Okay, but which government? You know what I mean? Like, do you trust the government of Saudi Arabia? For government of Saudi Arabia, any atheist is a terrorist. For government of Iran, if they have access to the technology, any human rights activist is all of a sudden is a potential threat, right? And for for better governments like United States, for example, you might think like, okay, they're the thing is that they use it for things that they're not supposed to, and then they're not transparent about it because they say it's classified information. So even a government like the United States is going to use this for things that we know, like when for example when you see how CIA operated based on things that was leaked or become declassified years after, you know that they're not saints. They're like using it for things that they shouldn't be all the time. So you're like, oh yeah, they should have access to this because of this. Well, yeah, they maybe they should have access to this because of tackling terrorism, but they also use it for things that they're not supposed to. And you can't even ask for transparency because, like, oh well, if this is transparent, then our enemies will see our methods, and we can't have that. Anyways, we spent so much time on this one. First question, so we should go to the next. All right. Humdoni is asking, freedom of speech is not 100% free and absolute since it has limitations. Julian Assange, Australian journalist and the guy behind WikiLeaks. I think everybody knows who Julian Assange is, but thank you for the intro. Is evidence that freedom of speech has limitations. When Assange leaked documents and videos of the USA's atrocities in the Middle East, he was declared an enemy of the state, threat to national security under Espionage Act. Do you guys think freedom of speech is truly free? Okay, so freedom of speech, you okay? I don't know. The way you're talking about freedom of speech is truly free is as if it's like there's something. Freedom of speech is truly free, but how much? I think the question should be like, how much freedom of speech should we have? Because as a concept, freedom of speech refers to freedom. So I don't like. It's not whether or not freedom of speech is free because it is freedom of speech, so it is free, right? I think your question is like, what is the level of freedom of speech that we have? So there's two questions. What is the level of freedom of speech we have? And what is the level of freedom of speech we should be having? Okay. So one of them is descriptive, the other one is normative. Okay. So descriptive, obviously, there's not a single place on earth right now that we have absolute freedom of speech. Okay. There's no country where this is like anything goes. Like one of the, and I don't know, you're talking, so the best country as an example for the highest level of free speech, one of the highest level of free speech is the United States of America. Okay. And United States of America, even though it has more freedom of speech than many other advanced countries, more than most European countries, it doesn't have absolute freedom of speech. Okay. So for example, United States, you have libel laws, right? You can't call out direct incitement to violence is illegal, right? There's another couple of examples. Okay, so yeah, we don't have absolute freedom of speech anywhere. Okay, and we don't want absolute freedom. We want a high level of free speech, but we don't want absolute free speech. It's ridiculous to expect high level of free speech. Like if somebody comes at like, hey, I think like somebody should go and like do something to Armin, and the act is a violent act. I think like, well, thank you. So can somebody please arrest that person? Like that would be good, nice, right? Um, Kenny is saying in the live chat, calling for violence goes beyond just expressing yourself. Well, every form of speech goes beyond just expressing yourself. Okay, I mean, for example, it's also if I say like, "Hey, people, can somebody draw a painting for me? I will pay them." That's speech, but it goes beyond just speech. It's a command as well, right? But I mean, libel laws, for example. Oh, for example, if I say like, "Hey, people, this cures cancer," right? Go drink this; it cures cancer, and it doesn't. Okay, that would be fraud. That would be illegal. So even in the United States, even though we're not asking for absolute freedom of speech. We're just asking for high levels of free speech. There was a way that I described it to Susanna, and we both we're not free speech absolutist. Okay, we're free speech. The way I described it to Susanna is that we are free speech maximalists. Okay, and free speech maximalist means that we want the maximum level of free speech that is possible. Okay, and what does that mean? That line has to be discussed. So Kenny is saying, how I see this is you be free to express yourself, express your ideas. I mean, somebody could say like, I want to express the idea that it would be good for me to pay the person who does something to Armin. You know what I mean? People like, I don't think express it. Yeah, you could say well, and also somebody could say like, I am expressing my view that so and so did this and this, and but right now in the United States, and if it's a lie, maybe libel laws will make that illegal, right? So yeah. But I do agree that there should be very few limitations on freedom of speech. Very few, right? So, for example, if you say like if you say like if it's incitement, if it's fraud, if it's libel, these are just few examples where we want to say like, okay, these are red lines. But other than that, other than few exceptions, everything else goes. Okay, so that I think that will makes it so that there's a lot of free. Okay, but I don't know. Maybe like so. What about the Julian Assange one, right? So a lot of us agree that Julian Assange like did nothing wrong, right? But would it make sense for that to be legal for what he did, right? Let me see. What was the law? Threat to national security under the Espionage Act. Okay, what is the Espionage Act? The Espionage Act. The Espionage Act of here. Because like even if we think Julian Assange did nothing wrong, even if we agreed with that, does it make sense for us to legalize what he did? Because maybe it doesn't make sense. Maybe like sometimes breaking the law is the right thing to do, but you still want the law to be in place. Here. The Espionage Act of 1917 is a United States federal law enacted on June 15, 1917, shortly after the United States entered World War I. It has been amended numerous times over the years. It was originally found in Title 50 of the U.S. Code, War and National Defense, but is now found under. Okay, I don't. What is it? Like, can you just tell me what it is here? It was intended to prohibit interference with military operations or recruitment, to prevent insubordination in the military, and to prevent the support of United States enemies during war. Okay, I hate it. I hate this law. In 1919, the Supreme Court of the United States unanimously ruled through Sherlock versus United States that the act did not violate the freedom of speech of those convinced under its provisions. Okay, so apparently the fact that this was discussed that means that this is an act that people see as a challenge to freedom of speech. Okay, but the Supreme Court decided that that's not the case. The constitutionality of the law, its relationship to free speech, and the meaning of its language have been contested in court ever since. Okay, well, what is the law? Among those charged, okay, it seems like to me, it seems like, given that this is a big discussion, right? Given that people are arguing over the fact that, hey, this is a violation of free speech or not, okay, I think I hate it. Okay, I think that because like okay, so I'm not a free speech absolutist. I'm a free speech maximalist. Okay, so I have to look into this more. But I think like whenever there's a discussion over whether or not this should be free speech or should not be free speech, okay, I'm going to take the side of the free speech people. Okay, since this is a huge debate and I want to be a free speech maximalist, right now my vote is casted on the side of this is horrible, get rid of the Espionage Act or whatever it is. Okay, but I can look into more of it. Okay, to me it seemed like this is a bad act, and yeah, so if you need to get rid of it, I wish there was a summary of exactly what it does. I don't want to have to spend the entire stream reading because we have to get to the other questions. What does it do? It just tells people not to say certain things. Okay, yeah, I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. Okay, D is saying in the live chat, it has to be specific and immediate to be legal. This is how pastors can get away with saying, oh no, this is about something, yeah. Okay, PK has a good comment. PK saying, if the leaked documents are for exposing the illegal activities of the government, then it should be protected. Okay, but a lot of them weren't. So he just willy-nilly just released a whole bunch of documents. So for example, okay, shouldn't it be illegal? Like let's say, for example, the United States is like has spies in Iran. Okay, here's a good example. Okay, so let's just like be a little bit more nuanced. Let's just like be black and white and like, oh yeah, it shouldn't be there. There should be no limitation. Everything should be free. Expose the government. Okay, what about this? Okay, what if the United States had spies in Iran? Okay, and I had the name of the spies, and then I leaked them, and now the spies in Iran who are doing good work because they're against the Islamic Republic of Iran, right? Now they're like sitting ducks. Like they were, and by the way, the Iranian spies for the United States in Iran are probably Iranians, okay? And they're helping the United States get information about like IRGC or stuff like that, okay? So this is good work that they're doing, and I just released their names, and now the government of Iran could just go arrest them and execute every single one of them, okay? That should be illegal. Do you agree, guys? That should be illegal. So what Julian Assange did, like here's okay, so maybe I don't know about this anymore, okay? For Julian Assange, just like release a whole bunch of information, okay? We hear about the ones that like we mostly focus on the ones that were like good that was released, right? For example, all the atrocities that the United States government did, and we're like, oh my God, thank you for releasing those information. But what about all the other data that he dumped out without vetting them? I think he didn't vet them. Did he vet them? Yeah, I think he vet them. He didn't vet them. That are like put a whole bunch of other people at risk. Like those are bad, right? So what if he only did those? Wouldn't we now say like, yeah, he should be arrested? Those what he did was illegal. Kenny in the live chat saying that's a fair point. It would put people at risk, but there should be a way to whistleblow correctly. Well, I think what's his name? Snowden did that, right? Is that how you say his name? He did it more. I don't know who did it more responsibly. I forgot about this, but one of these two, when they were leaking information, they went through journals. Yeah, it was Snowden. I think went through the Guardian, didn't he? I forgot about this. Was a long time ago. And he was like, I'm not going to dump all this information out. I'm going to go through journalists and they're going to vet it and they're going to release it responsibly so I don't put anybody at risk. I don't remember if this is how it happened, right? So I think Julian Assange was like, bleh, right? And he just like released it and he's just like, guy, what the hell are you doing? You're putting people at risk, okay? And Edward Snowden was like, I'm going to go talk to experts. I'm going to talk to journalists. They're going to go through this data, and they're going to only release the parts that don't put people at risk. This is a very oversimplification. I think Snowden did it more properly. I don't know. I forgot about. This was like, yeah. Higgs boson is saying Snowden was responsible. Yes. So maybe Julian Assange did something, should be praised and condemned. Praised for leaking the parts that were supposed to be praised, and condemned for the parts that he shouldn't have released. And Edward Snowden is the real hero. He was like responsible all the way. Imran in the live chat is saying, yes, Snowden tried going through the proper government channels repeatedly, but was shut down. Yeah, I think Snowden should be pardoned. Kenny saying you are right. Snowden was much more careful about it. Okay. Snowden should be pardoned. Julian Assange, I don't know. I have to think about that. Oh, but Assange isn't American. Oh yeah, you're right. I don't know how the legal stuff works. I'm pretty sure, like, even if you're not American, if you go to espionage and stuff, like, you could get in trouble with the U.S. government. Has some can still do stuff to you. Anyways, let's go to next question. Okay. Higgs boson is asking, what's the historical context behind the violence done by the IRA? Is it religious? I'd love to hear the Celtic. Oh, Susie, the Celtic Beauty's opinion. Susie's not here today. We will ask her again late next week when she's here. But my opinion, first of all, you shouldn't trust her on this opinion. That's her people you're talking about, so she's going to be biased. So listen to me. Okay, listen to me. I could talk about this more objectively. Okay. Yeah. So, no, I'm kidding, by the way. I think that this has the religious side of this has been exaggerated as a way by a lot of atheists, because they're like, it's not just Muslims. It's like what are you talking about? And like, oh, the Crusades, and people are like, well, that was a long time ago. I'm like, the IRA. The IRA was recently, and that was religious, wasn't it? But I don't think it was. Was it? I think they were like, I don't think it was religious. I think like just because you could like separate them through religious lines, that doesn't mean that they are. That means that their struggle was because of religious reasons. Oh, there we go. Oh, I'm right. What do you guys? Let me see what you guys think. So Dia is saying it was Catholic versus Protestant. Yeah, but was that the reason why they were fighting? That's the problem. But I think like just because they were Catholics against Protestant, a lot of atheists jump on it like, hey, religion. It's always religion, isn't it? Again, 1 point for atheists. But I don't know. Let's see. Here. Look. The conflict was primarily political and nationalistic, fueled by historical events. It also had an ethnic and sectarian dimension, but despite use of the term Protestant and Catholic to refer to the two sides, it was not a religious conflict. A key issue was the status of Northern Ireland. Not a religious guy. So it was maybe a coincidence. Okay. I mean, it was a coincidence that the line, okay. So for example, the fact that they were ethnically separated. Okay. The ethnicity was related to the religious identity. Okay. But that was, so it was like a a third variable that was connected to both. Okay, so the ethnicity or the sectarianism was how they were actually divided over political issues, and the sectarianism was also related to the religious identity, but the religious identity was not directly responsible for the conflict. So it was the religious identity was as a third factor that was indirectly related to the thing that was causing the conflict. Was not in. So you understand what I'm saying? So you have B, okay, is related to C, and B is also related to A. So A through B is related to C, but A is not directly related to C. I hope you get what I'm saying. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that was like, make sure like. So this is the problem with atheist activists, right? They're always like looking for like, oh, there's a conflict. And as soon as there's any mention of religion in this conflict, they want to jump like, it's religion. If we get rid of religion, everything in the world will be fixed because religion is the problem behind everything. Okay, so just make sure that as an atheist activist, you don't over, you don't overdo it over like this, over like finding causes where it doesn't exist, right? So yeah, that's the answer to that. Kenny in the live chat is saying, interesting. I did assume it was purely religious. Learned something today. Well, me too, actually. I didn't know. D is saying, yeah, but they also say it is land dispute in Nigeria where it is Muslims versus Christians. Muslims always want land to expand the Islamic empire. I don't think. Okay, so D, I don't know. I mean, it's possible that. I mean, in Nigeria, we know that the dispute is religious as well, right? Like we know that Muslims, for example, attack Christians because they are Christians, right? Like we know that happens, okay? But I don't think it's fair to say that Muslims always want land to expand the Islamic empire. I don't think that's what they're thinking. I mean, everybody wants land. I don't think the motivation all of a sudden changed for Muslims. Okay, like, do you think that if the Muslims, if they weren't Muslims, they would be like, extra land? Guys, do we want to build an empire? No, guys, you can keep your land. We don't want land. Given that we don't want an empire, like who doesn't want land? Okay, everybody wants land, and I don't think the people who are fighting for land, if they happen to be Muslim, they're thinking their motivation is like, yes, this is working according to plan. Our Islamic caliphate is coming to fruition. Like, no, that's not what they're thinking. They're like, hey, yay, extra land. But extra land has like immediate utility without without you having to plan for this like eventuality of having an Islamic empire. Right? Okay, so D, I agree that many people deny any religious cause. Yes, so there are, I do understand that there's religious cause, but I don't think every Muslim's mindset is thinking about the eventuality of a. I think that's I think only a fringe, very, very tiny fringe of Muslims are thinking about like, oh yeah, extra land so that we could like finally have our Islamic caliphate happening. I think it's just, guys, even Taliban doesn't think that. Okay? It's like, if you're Taliban, you're thinking about only Afghanistan, okay? If you want to go from thinking only about Afghanistan to thinking about like, no, I want the caliphate to take over the planet, you then switch from being Taliban to being to join the Daesh. You switch branding, you switch sides. So even among the radicals, not all of them think like that. Yeah, but it is. Yeah, I do agree that some people try to deny the religious aspect of it. I'm just saying that we shouldn't do the same thing from the other end. Okay, we shouldn't like exaggerate. So some people deny the religious aspect of it, and some people on our side exaggerate the religious aspect of it. All right. Taliban army. Okay, cool. So we did that one. All right, we should go through these questions a little bit faster. Higgs boson is asking: are some Iranian nationalists really want to try Zoroastrian? I'm going to read this differently. Do some Iranian nationalists really want to try Zoroastrianism? I know there's Parsi ritual, which involves consuming cow urine. Will they be up to it? I've never heard of a Zoroastrian ritual where people drink cow urine. Also, Parsi, the Zoroastrian community that people refer to as Parsi are in India, not in Iran. Parsi in Iran means Farsi. Farsi is referring to an ethnicity which I don't even know exists anymore. In India, Parsi refers to Zoroastrians, and in India, isn't it the Hindus who drink the cow urine? I don't know. Do actually there Zoroastrian communities that drink cow urine? If there was, I would probably have heard about it by now. Because I've been looking for things to attack Zoroastrian on. Somebody in the live chat, okay, Shreya is saying Parsi community might have been influenced by the Hindus. Yeah, I don't think, guys. I honestly I don't want to defend Zoroastrianism because I'm actually looking for stuff to attack Zoroastrianism on, but I don't think Zoroastrians drink cow urine. I mean, not at least not anything that is in Zoroastrianism. I know Hindus do. I know it's within Hindu scripture. Traditionally, nope. Mixture of pomegranate juice. No, they don't drink. Okay, they don't drink cow urine. I don't think so. Okay. Anyways, for the Iranian nationalists who want to go back to Zoroastrianism, to answer your question, they don't have any idea about what most of them, a lot of them, actually, let me be more accurate, don't even have any idea about what Zoroastrianism is about. They don't know the teaching. They haven't read that Avesta or any other of the Zoroastrian scripture. They don't know the history. Okay, they just know Zoroastrianism is the religion of Iran before Islam took over. That's all they know, and that's good enough information for them. You know, I mean, they're like, "Oh, Islam sucks. We are Iranian nationalists. What's the OG religion of Iran? Zoroastrianism. Say no more. I'm Zoroastrian now." Okay, like what? Ask them, what is Zoroastrianism? And the religion of the Prophet Zoroaster. Yeah, gotcha. And okay, what does it teach? The only teaching of Zoroastrianism that a lot of them might know is Goftaranik, Pendaranik, Kirdaranik, which is one of the dumbest lines. Like, okay, so this is what they it's one of the dumbest religious teachings I've ever heard. Like people that's like, oh, what a beautiful religion! It has 3 commandments. What are the commandments? Goftaranik means say good. Okay. Kirdaranik, do good. Pendaranik means think good. Oh, think good, do good, say good. Whoa, wow, what a beautiful religion. What is good? Okay, because guess what? Islam also tells you to do good. Okay, the problem is, what do they consider good? Because just telling people to do good, that doesn't make you a beautiful religion, right? It's Zoroastrianism is extremely misogynist. It's extremely anti-woman. It has wife beating verses. It has more extreme wife beating. Okay, Zoroastrianism's wife beating verses is more extreme than Hinduism and Islam. The last time I checked, if I remember correctly, right? So like, wait, what do you mean? You said do good. I'm like, well, this is good. Like, oh crap. The oxymoron, it says Iranian wannabe Zoroastrians are like way of life of Hindus. Yeah, no, they're no, they're actually even more ridiculous because they have no idea. They just, but at, at least, like Hindus, they know, they know what something about Rama, his story, something about. I mean, also Hinduism has like good meditation techniques, right? But and you could do meditation, and meditation is useful. But Zoroastrianism, they're like they have no, they what they like is the aesthetics, just like the branding. They're like, okay, I just know these are the symbols, and I'm just gonna get a necklace of with Ahura Mazda or whatever that thing, whatever that thing is. Wait, is that what that thing is called? See, I don't even know. Yeah, Farvahar. Yeah, so they're just gonna get like a Farvahar necklace, and that's it. They're like, oh, I'm Zoroastrian. And by the way, the people who are actually Zoroastrian, a lot of them are annoyed by this neo-Zoroastrian because their Zoroastrianism is political. They're becoming Zoroastrian to make a political statement, and it causes Zoroastrianism to become a major issue. Oh, I think I have mail. I'll be right back. Talk amongst each other. I'll be right. All right, I think I spent enough on this question. Let's go to the next one. Did you guys behave while I was away? Oh my god, this question is so long. Higgs boson, are you in the live chat? Why are your questions so long? I feel like it doesn't even fit. Can you make the question smaller? Like, what is this? It's like just one long question. Okay. All right. Guys, please make the questions shorter. Please, please, please. Is that too much to ask? It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. All right, so let's see what this is. Higgs boson is saying, what's your opinion on Swedengate? I have no idea what Swedengate is. Let's read together. Let's learn about this together. See, it doesn't even, I can't even show the question because it's covering the screen. I mean, the article. All right, here. Truth about Swedengate. Are Swedes the strangest people walking on Earth? Yes or no? Okay. What is this? Why is this? As someone who lived there for a couple of years, I always find it funny when the internet kicks the door open and reveals Sweden standing with its pants down round its milky white ankles, looking affronted. It's a country people think they know about, but don't really. Okay, what's Swedengate? So it was recently following an incident that has come to be known as Swedengate. Someone posted a response to an innocent question on Reddit. What is the weirdest thing you had to do at someone else's house because of their culture or religion? Oh no, this sounds dangerous. A user reported that they remember going to a Swedish friend's house as a child and being asked to stay in another room while the family he was visiting ate dinner together. Many Swedish people replied saying, well, yeah, that's the way we do it here. What the hell? Wait. Being asked to stay. So, wait, they don't. You go to their house and instead of like giving you food, they tell you to go sit in the room while they eat food? That doesn't make any sense. Sounds bad, doesn't it? People on the internet from all over the world erupted in protests that not giving someone food in their home, in their culture, was at the very least incredibly rude and at the worst tantamount to abuse. Among my own friends, I heard strong reactions, particularly uh, from people who are not white. Yeah, it is rude. Guys, are we being racist to Swedish people to say that they are their culture? Yeah, guys, we could like crap on Swedish culture here together. One said that she was rocked by reading about Swedengate because for an Asian family, not force feeding your guests is an abomination. A British Indian friend said she felt actively guilty that she didn't have enough different types of milk to offer someone who stayed over at her house recently, a person she didn't even invite to do so. The sheer flabbergasted horror people. Okay, so I'm not going to read the rest of this, but yeah, that is crazy. That is insane. What's the explanation for this? Swedes are defensive. They have some good reasons to be. Lots of things are good about Sweden, and hearing American or British people dump on their nice little country for minor indiscretions like being weird about laundry must sting, given they have some of the most robust social welfare Okay, guys, you have some good stuff, but this is weird. Okay, so let me see what the question is. I'm not going to read the rest of it. Apparently, in Western Nordic countries, you're less likely to get food as a guest. There is a case where a kid went to their friend's place. His mom made dinner only for him and kept the first waiting. This is a common occurrence apparently in Sweden. I even heard Swedish moms would hand over a bill. What? I even heard Swedish moms would hand over a bill to their guests if they had to make food. That is insane. What do you guys think? What do you guys think? That does sound insane. That shouldn't be allowed. That should be legal. I don't know what to think about this. I'm just learning this as we okay. The entire Twitter debunked on Twitter for dunked on Sweden for this, mostly coming from everyone from Africa's Indians, Americans. What's the point of being enlightened if you become crappy host? Okay, so I don't think that's fair. I do think that the fact that they have better welfare and better. Okay, so okay, let's be to be fair to Sweden. That I don't think that's a fair point to expose on. Okay, you're saying what's the point of being enlightened if you're going to be crappy host? Okay, honestly, as bad as this sounds, I rather be Sweden than India. Okay, I rather be Sweden than Iran. Okay, so in India and Iran, when somebody comes to your house, you feed them and you don't give them the bill. Okay, but in Sweden, apparently, you tell them to go in the room while you eat because you're not going to give them food, or if you feed them, you give them the bill, which sounds insane, but with that insanity, I still think Sweden is superior to Iran and India when it comes to many things, including the standard of living, including the Enlightenment values, including security, including not having like in Iran, the government coming after you for the thing for your opinions, including unlike India having the caste system. All right, so okay, Higgs boson saying last point was a dick. Yes. So, but while Sweden is superior to all these other countries, Sweden is superior to all African countries, to all Middle Eastern countries, and to superior to India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. That doesn't mean that just because they're superior that we can't attack them on this culture, right? We're like, hey, good, yeah, you're a better country, but at the same time, we could be like, this is insane. However, I'm trying to question my assumptions. Is this really bad, or is it because we have normalized so much the way we treat guests that it just sounds bad. Like I'm trying to, because like I'm having an internal conflict right now, okay? Because I'm like, that is insane. And then I'm asking myself, why is that insane? And I'm like, well, because taking care of your guests is good. And then I'm like asking myself, well, why is that good? Well, because obviously that's the right thing to do. And like, oh my God, I just found an assumption that I have that was forced upon me by society, and I don't have a good reason for it. You know what I mean? Like maybe this is one of those things that maybe the Swedes got it right. Maybe we just assume that this is the right thing to do, and we never question it because, of course, it's the right thing to do. But is it really the right thing to do? What if the Swedes are like, the rest of the world is crazy? We have it the right way. Let me see what you guys are thinking. Idris is saying the most logical answer I've seen from Swedes is that that child move is that what? I think you mean children. That children move very freely on their own, and a parent could end up having 10 kids in their house at dinner time, so feeding them be pricey. You know, maybe Swedes, maybe the Swedish model is better, because I'm thinking about, like, we have normalized the idea that you have to take care of your guests, you have to be hospitable, you have to go out of your way to take. Like, I grew up in a Persian culture, and that is what you do. You bring out everything, right? You bring out all the you feed the guest better than you feed your own children, right? And we have normalized this as a value, as a virtue. It's virtue signal. This is a virtue signal. I am a better host. No, I'm a better host. And it's pricey. And we just assume that that's a good thing to do. But why should you? Why can't people who want to eat at your house pay for the food? Like, it's not their food, it's your food. My assumptions are being challenged. Guys, I was trying to be racist against Swedes, but unfortunately I don't know if I can. Maybe Higgs boson is saying, I think they took individualism to an extreme level. How much do you favor collectivism? This is not about individualism or collectivism. This is more about a virtue that we have accepted as a norm, and we never assume, like, why do people have the right to show up at your house and you have to feed them with your hard-earned money? Why is that? Why have we turned that into such a virtue where, where people could, I don't know. Shayash is saying, feed your guests, make them fat so that they can never walk to you again. Hey, it's for food, they will walk. PK saying, basically, we want to make our guests obese. Bobby is saying, it's a virtue signal to feed your friends. It's part of our culture to share meals. It brings people together to enjoy their time alone. Okay, I think the act by itself could be seen as a part of positive. It's a virtue if it's expected. That's the difference. Okay, so I think it has not. I think, like, when it goes from seeing, like, for example, from being seen as a nice thing to do, it is a nice thing to do. But when it's an expectation, then you don't get the benefit of being thanked for doing something that is nice to do, because it is the norm. Instead, you get the punishment from not doing it. You've been seen less of in society. So it's not a positive, it's not something just like that to be appreciated. Is something that is forced. It's something that if you don't do, you look badly upon, right? So that makes it a virtue. That makes it not just a good act, because a good act is something that is not expected, but if you do it, people will appreciate it. A virtue is something that you have to do to signal to society that I'm part of society. Please, dear society, please accept me as your member. Please, please, please don't shame me. Please, please, please don't ostracize me. Don't see me as other. I have to do this. If somebody shows up at my house, I have to do this, or our society would crap on me. And I think it might actually make sense to not turn that into a norm. It makes sense to be like, hey, it's not a norm, so if you do it, we're shocked and surprised and pleasantly, we're like thankful. We're very thankful, right? If you actually remove this from a norm, then you're actually your good deed will be appreciated even more because people didn't expect that. But if it's a demand, if it's an expectation, then people who don't want to do it are doing it just so that they have their membership card stamped in the society. Asian Americans say it helps build bridges, though. It helps build bridges if it's not an expectation, because it actually destroys bridges if it's an expectation and you fail. If it's not an expectation, then when you do it, people are like, oh my God, what a gesture of friendship. My God, you sir, you ma'am, you impress us so much. You really are giving us all this food for free? Okay, that builds bridges. But if everybody thinks that you should be doing that and you're just doing what everybody expects you to do, then it doesn't build bridges. Oxymar is saying, I like Swedish culture a bit now. Yeah, I don't know, guys. I don't know which one is better. I'm just thinking like maybe we just accepted these things because we were brainwashed that this is the right way to do. Maybe we should just challenge our assumptions. Bobby is saying, if it's a random person you didn't invite over, you have no obligation. But if you invite people over, you cannot eat without inviting them to join you. That's true. Yeah, that's a fair point. Okay, I think like maybe this is like, but in our culture, I don't know about your culture, Bobby. Okay, if as a kid, if I just bring my friends over and my parents didn't expect that, they are gonna feed them. They're gonna be like, come eat lunch with us, come eat our food. Okay, and they didn't expect it. Like our kid just brought in a whole bunch of like an army of children, and now we have to feed them all. Okay, so maybe that's a good midway, right? A middle way. If the people who are in charge of the household, if they say, "Hey, come to our house," okay, they have to be specific. Come to our house and eat our food, okay? Maybe like something like that. So if you're inviting them, you have to feed them because that's why you invited them, okay? But if people just randomly show up to your house, maybe unlike maybe Indian culture or Arab culture or Persian culture, you should not be expected to feed them because you did not expect them to come. Maybe that's the midway. That's the midway. We didn't know you're coming, so we're sorry. We're gonna eat, and there's no food. We're gonna eat now. You're here. There's no food for you. I'm sorry. We didn't expect. We didn't invite you. That's the midpoint. Oh no, Asian American just revoked my Asian card. Damn. Idris is saying, actually, this gifting contest behavior is a way to show your status in society and what you can afford. Maybe Sweden is so wealthy that this status symbol is not so meaningful anymore. Oh my God, that's very interesting. I didn't think about that. Interesting. Yeah, the government feeds you if you're poor, man. Why do I have to feed you? But I don't know. I just think I think it's a good based on this back and forth. I think we found a good midpoint. Okay, if I invited you, I will feed you. If you show up at my house, I don't care that you're in my house. If it's time for me to eat, there's no food for you. I didn't invite you. Okay, I think that's a good that's a good in between. Yeah, the oxymoron is saying it's sort of like splitting bills with the girl, rude in a classical sense. Yeah. I think if your girlfriend makes more money than you, maybe she should be paying. I don't know. Who pays for it? Wow, everybody's taking it there. Okay, I'm already broken one one social standard. We could leave the other one for another day. All right, next question. Higgs boson asked, will climate change be a cause for World War III? I can see countries declaring war over water, food, habitable land. Is the best way to prepare for climate change to stock more weapons? Oh my God. So that you can conquer other resources during climate catastrophe. I mean, everyone coming together to solve climate crisis sounds too cliche. Okay, I have a hot take here. Okay, I know a lot of people don't like this take, and I don't want you to spread this take. Okay, because I want people to be alarmed as much as possible because climate change is a serious issue. Okay, so I want people to be more alarmed that if it's okay, so if this is the actual threat, okay, I want people to be more worried rather than less worried because it's impossible to get it right. Okay. However, I personally think that we will solve all of these things. Okay, we will go through a very difficult period of time, and we will pay a heavy price for it. Okay, but eventually, like for example, you're saying people declaring war over water. I don't think. I mean, okay, in the foreseeable future, maybe, but we will have technology sooner than most people think that turning saltwater, seawater, into drinkable water, um, so cheap, so fast for most countries. Okay, for almost every country, like even the poorest countries, will be able to just take out seawater and just like use it for agricultural, drinking water, everything they need. Okay, that technology will solve that. This food, habitable land, that's going to solve itself because once we have water, technology is going to make it possible for us to turn deserts into habitable land so easily. Okay, a lot sooner than a lot of people think. Okay, also climate change. I also think that we're going to get off of fossil fuels a lot sooner than a lot of people think, and as soon as you, again, I'm not saying that the climate change is not a big deal. It's a huge deal, and more people should be alarmed. And I'm like, it's going to be a nightmare for a while, but I think eventually we're gonna every single car. Like, if you see a car that runs on gas and fuel, you're gonna take a picture because they're like, no, there's gonna be a lot of them running. But most cars, like, I think at some point it will be illegal for you to burn fossil fuels to move a vehicle. Everything, it will be, all cars will be electric. Food is not going to be an issue. We're going to be able to grow our meat and yeah, with water, with water crisis solves, the food crisis will also be solved. We're also going to be able to change like inhabitable places to is technology will solve the food crisis, the water crisis, the habitable land crisis, and also the climate crisis. It will eventually solve it. Okay, and if we get the closer we get to the danger zone, the more money will be poured into these technologies that will solve these problems. Okay. And again, I'm not saying climate change is not a real issue. It is a real issue. Anybody who's not taking this is after AI, this is the greatest threat to civilization. Okay, so you cannot throw enough money at this. In fact, the money that we're throwing at this is a fraction of what we should be throwing at. I'm not trying to dismiss this as a problem. I'm just saying that I don't see this ending us. I see this. We will not end this. Like, if you could see 100 years into the future, you will see like I think you will see no pollution, no water shortage, and I honestly think 100 years from now, you would not have a single person starving because of poverty. This is what I think. 100 years from now, you would not see a single person starving because of poverty. That's my. I might be too optimistic, but that's what I think technology will bring us. Higgs was saying, Armin trusts the invisible hand. I'm not trusting the invisible guys. I do not trust the invisible hand. All the investments that I'm suggesting requires the government involvement. Okay, I'm saying the government using taxpayer money should be investing in research and technology. They should be. The market itself is blind to the fact of, because the problem with pollution is negative externality. So the market is blind to it, for us to invest more in technologies that brings this future that I'm saying, the government needs to use taxpayer money to subsidize it, right? So that means that for me, I literally don't trust the invisible hand of the market. Okay, I think the invisible hand of the market is a very, very useful tool. The markets are very powerful, but government needs to push some things when the market is blind to it. So I am trusting in the in our capacity to develop powerful technology, not just the market bringing it about, right? Like for example, NASA brought us so much technology. That was the government. That was not the free hand of the market. Oh, we got a donation. Hey, Anonymous donated £5. €5. Thank you, Thank you, Anonymous, for the €5. Is that pounds or euros? That's euros. Thank you. That's very. Thank you, D, for telling us that we got a donation. Thank you, D. So I could thank you, whoever it was. I appreciate you. Yeah, okay. So somebody's saying most starvation today is because of bad food distribution. The only problem is bad institutions and stupidity. I don't think so. I think like it's not stupidity because like there's so many smarter people than you and me thinking at these. If things are not happening, it's because we haven't figured out a way to do it yet, and we will. Israel, by the way, has the best technology of changing seawater into drinking water. So Israel might be eventually doing more good to the world than all the harms that it did. Yeah, Bobby, I agree with you. But yeah, I support all the money that the government is spending on research. So as somebody who believes in free market capitalist, people think like, oh, I believe the government should have no role. Okay, so no, that's not a libertarian. That's an anarchist. I'm not an anarchist. I do believe that governments have a role, a very important, helpful role. Okay, Oxymoron is saying opinion on the Kashmir files. I'm gonna watch it soon with Susie. Me and Susie will watch it together, and we should be asking us this maybe next week. I'll try to watch it by next week. I'm not sure. I don't promise it because I've been very busy. That's why I haven't watched it yet. Oxymoron is saying, in what ways do you think it's an inaccurate movie? It's okay. You assume that I think it's an inaccurate movie, which is probably you're probably right. I haven't watched it yet, and I think it's probably an inaccurate movie. So your assumptions about my assumptions are correct. Oxymoron knows me enough to know that that's probably will be my assumption. I mean, it's a propaganda piece. It has to be inaccurate by any reference to movie caused widespread violence against Muslim community across India? Question mark. Oh, so is this you asking for cookies for not for no acts of violence against Muslims? So are you trying to Oxymoron? Are you trying to make us notice that the Hindus did not? There was no widespread, not just violence. Okay, so maybe there was violence, but as long as there was no widespread violence against, hey, why does this make me feel like there was violence against Muslim, but you still want a cookie for it because there was no widespread violence against Muslims? Okay, I don't know. I haven't looked into this. This is a Susanna question. You should post this question again next week for when Susanna is here, because Susanna is a lot more aware of what's happening right now in India than me. Okay, but do you want a recognition of the fact that there was no widespread violence, even if there was violence against Muslim? Because that's a very low. If that's what you're asking, that's a very low standard. Like, hey guys, there was a movie. There was a propaganda piece against Muslims in India, and guess what? No widespread violence against Muslims. Yay! Amazing Hindus that had no widespread violence against Muslims. This is what we recognize. This is what we recognize as an accomplishment these days. God damn it. And maybe there's only calls for violence against Muslims, but no actual widespread violence to Muslims. So do you want like, hey, we call that for violence? I mean, yeah. It was Oxymoron saying it was for Susanna. Okay, sorry. We will post this exact same question again next week, and Susanna will answer it. And by then we will both have watched the Kashmir Files. So the question continues. As far as I am aware, Hindu pundits started getting killed in K Valley after this, and 2 Hindus were killed by Muslims, by Muslim mob for approaching theater to watch the movie. Okay, so I don't know if this is true, so I need Susanna to fact check this. Okay, Oxymoron is saying this question was for Susanna. You wouldn't understand. She's better. Okay, you're right. Okay, especially about this stuff. Susanna is definitely better than me when it comes to answering these questions and stuff like this. But I'm still gonna answer it anyways. I don't know if this second part is true. Okay, but I'm just so concerned, Oxymoron, about your attempt of. Okay, to me, sometimes it seems that you want to say things that collectively holds a community responsible for something like this by constantly giving examples of individuals doing so. Like, for example, I don't know if you've noticed this. I sometimes worry if I'm doing that about Muslims and Hindus, right? So every time when I'm covering the news, you see, like when I say like, "Oh, this happened," okay? If I ever think like our news story is going to give the expression, if I ever get reminded that our audience might think like Hindus are collectively this or that, okay? Then I always, even though you guys get tired of it because I say so much, I say like, by the way, these people. The vast majority of Hindus are amazing, good people. Like, please don't take this news story as a way to come up with a collective understanding of how Hindus or Muslims or Christians or Jewish people or anyone else's, right? And I sometimes fail. Sometimes, like when I'm listening to our news coverage, I'm like, oh my God, that story, the way that we covered that story, some people might come up with that impression, and I should have been said like I should have added and not all somewhere in that story, right? But I think like you are not as careful because maybe you don't even think like that. You do think about Muslims collectively, and you constantly come up with examples without. And I'm not saying we shouldn't highlight these examples. These are examples that are bad and they're motivated through religious identity. Okay, so they should be called out. Okay, but they should be called out because of what certain ideas are making how certain people operate, not because we are seeing the whole collective itself as a problem. Okay, and I want you to invite you to, first of all, you yourself not see a collective Muslims collectively as bad, but also to be mindful of how you speak of individual Muslims who have done bad things. Be mindful of how you talk about it and how you describe it. Try to be more careful about what are you trying to what would people see that as? How would people interpret that as? Right? Because, like for example, even within this question that you typed here, it's obviously a pro-Hindu, anti-Muslim stance. Okay, you know that I can go find examples of Hindus doing horrible things in the name of Hinduism. Okay, and you know I could do the opposite. I could go find examples of Hindus doing amazing things to try to fight against that. Even there are Hindus who are fighting the caste system. There are Hindus who are trying to bring peace between Muslims and Hindus. And I could do that with Muslims as well. I could find examples of horrible things. I could find examples of great things. Okay. What we're doing here, what me and Susanna is doing, is that when we finding examples of horrible things, we want to see what ideas are responsible for it, rather than trying to attribute that to a whole community, and then everybody else that is a member of that community to find them guilty by association. Okay, and when when you see the one side of things, when you see the good in one community and the bad in another, right? You're not making this about fighting for good ideas against bad ideas. What you're doing is you're trying to put two communities against each other as a whole, and that's a dangerous thing to do. Okay. D is saying, I try and take any possible biased language out of our news. Oh, thank you, D. No, thank you so much, D. Okay. But yeah, maybe ask this question again on the next stream, and we will. I really want to watch the Kashmir file, so I will try to do that before the next stream. All right. Why has Florida turned such red pill? You mean okay? Red pill is different from a state going red. So Kaz Lopez say, why has Florida turned such red pill conservative state on steroids? I mean, it was for most of its time in recent history a swing state. Yeah, it was. You're right, and it turned red. Red pill and a state going red are two different things, but okay. But let me see. Let's answer this question. Okay, let's look at this together. I don't know the answer to this, so I have to look it up. Is red the new purple? Why Florida is now a red state? The Sunshine State is in the grips of the GOP and is bleeding red for the first time. For the first time in modern history, as of January 2022, there are more active registered Republican voters in the state of Florida than there are Democrat voters. Flashback just a few short years ago. I know what's happening. Just tell me why. If okay, well, recent presidential election claiming Florida as a key potential swing state. Recent trends, however, suggests this uncertainty. Okay, so you spent 3 paragraphs telling me I'm here to know why, but you're telling me it's turned red in 3 paragraphs. Okay, Florida is currently in the what? Descend. What is this? What is this word? What is this word? Decennial. Decennial process. Dissenting. Okay. Oh no, I don't know. Decennial lasting for or relating to a period of 10 years. Oh, in a decennial process of redrawing their electoral map according to the. Okay, can you tell us why? It's not going to tell us why. The gray migration. Oh, there we go. In addition to redistricting, an increasingly aging electorate further points to Republican learning status quo, the influx of older retired. Okay, so here are the reasons. Okay, so because Florida is a place where older retirees are moving into, so it's a demographic change. A demographic that overwhelmingly leans right has accordingly challenged the electoral capital. Okay, so it's redistricting, but that's mostly that doesn't change the demographic increasingly. Okay, so the population is aging, and old people are moving in. There's your answer. Number of young voters, and has accordingly challenged the electoral capital of increasingly numbers of young voters and voters of color in Florida. Okay, so it's old people moving in. But so there is something that makes it more blue, there are things that are making it more blue, things that are making it more red. Okay, so the racial demographic are changing, but old people are moving in. Old people are more right wing. The more racial diversity is making it more blue, but one is more powerful than the other. It says half of the population of Florida is composed of people of color, so that half should make it more liberal. Okay, so unfortunately for Democrats, the answer seems no. While partisan tendencies among racial minorities show that a majority of Latino Floridians indeed vote Democrat, they do so far behind the national average. Oh, and these numbers are only decreasing. During the 2020 campaign season, the Biden campaign staved off a myriad of false socialism labels for the Trump campaign from the Trump campaign. Okay, so the Latinos apparently are not as so Florida's racial diversity comes from Latinos, and I think the Latinos are becoming more right leaning than other racial minorities, so they're not reliable for Democrats. Or like over the okay, at this portion of 80% of Latinos. Yeah, so if you tell the Latinos that Biden is socialist, the Latinos, because of their experience with Cuba and Venezuela, they're gonna be like, "Oh no, let's become Republicans." Okay, so the Latinos that are in the United States, they are very allergic to anything that could be smells like socialism. So unlike other, racial minorities, they're not as reliable for Democrats. So the racial diversity of Florida doesn't seem to be enough to make it blue, and the older population moving there are making it red. Does that make sense? Let me see what you guys are saying. PK saying it's not Latinos, it's Cubans. They hate socialism. Yeah, they hate. No, well, not Cubans. Cubans in America, they hate socialism. Not all Cubans hate socialism, but the ones that are in America, they hate socialism. Not all of them. Again, let's not be collectivist. With a passion, right? And Bobby's saying it has nothing to do with their ethnicity. They fled socialist countries, and Democrats pander to Marxists. Democrats do not pander. Okay, first of all, that's a lie. Okay, um, Democrats are capitalists. Oh, okay. So they might pander to Marxists sometimes. Not all of them. Some of them do, but uh, Democrats are more capitalist than Republicans. Okay, Republicans claim they're capitalists, but they violate capitalism more than the Democrats do. Republicans are protectionists. That's anti-capitalist. Republicans spend more on government and especially on military, than the Democrats. That's anti-capitalist. And the Republicans very much are into lobby groups like the NRA and a whole bunch of oil industry and a whole bunch of other lobbying. They get so the line between the market and government is more blurry with a lot of Republicans. So Republicans claim to be capitalists, but I think on average the Democrats are more capitalist than the Republicans. But anyways, I didn't say it's because of their ethnicity. They just happen to be identified by their ethnicity because that's how they're identified as. Like nobody when we say Latinos in Florida, they don't hate socialism. Okay, nobody is suggesting that it's because they're Latinos. Okay, it's like obviously it's because they come from Cuba and they left Cuba because they were fleeing a socialist country and that's why they hate it. Like it's not like, oh, my DNA is making me allergic to socialism. Nobody is suggesting it's because of their ethnicity, right? Ibn Qayyim is saying the majority of Latinos in Florida are Cuban descent. Yeah, that's what I said. Where most Latinos in the rest of the U.S. are Mexican. That's the reason for the disparity. That makes sense, right? So the Latinos in Florida are Cubans, and Cubans who have fled Cuba. They're like, no socialism here, please. But again, as our article said, the reason why they might go run away from Democrats is because they falsely through propaganda think that the Democrats are socialists. The Democrats are not socialists. Republicans are more pro-business rather than capitalist. Yeah, because capitalist is not pro-business. Capitalist is pro-business, okay, so you have to be more clear, okay? favoritism for businesses is wrong. It's anti-capitalist. You can be pro-business, but no pro-favoritism towards businesses. Okay, because if you are, that's anti-capitalist. Okay, so you want business. So capitalism as a whole makes businesses be more successful, but not if you pick certain businesses over others, or if you have favors, right? Because capitalism is the biggest enemy of some businesses. Capitalism breaks monopolies. Capitalism puts businesses in direct competition with each other, right? Capitalism makes a whole bunch of businesses go bankrupt, and rightfully so. Okay, so for example, if you come and save business, so certain times when you come and save businesses or save an entire industry, okay, you're pro that industry, but you're anti-capitalist, because capitalism would have let that entire industry go bankrupt because it wasn't performing very well. So pro-business could sometimes be anti-capitalist. All right. Let's see. Saying, Armin, isn't everything to do with perception? No. 4 is bigger than 2, and that's not based on perception. Kenny saying capitalist means being for free market. Depends. Okay, so depends on the brand of capitalism that you're supporting. Okay, I defend a more regulated. So you have, laissez-faire capitalism, which has very limited regulation and makes the government's role be only defense and judicial system. That's like a very extreme form of capitalism. Where no country has that form of capitalism. Okay, every country that has capitalism, the form of capitalism that they have right now is a regulated form of capitalism. And when you have regulated capitalism, that means the market is free mostly, but there are some limitations. The argument would be what those limitations should be. Okay, and so for example, I personally favor the free market capitalism of Scandinavian countries. Okay, a lot of people who don't understand what capitalism is think because they have a higher level of regulation, they're socialists, but they themselves admit that they're capitalist countries. They're just the regulations there are different from like a country like the United States. Okay, so I want a higher level of regulation. So you want still free market, but more regulations, more limitations than a country, for example, the United States. But that is still capitalism. So a lot of people think like the Scandinavian countries are socialist because of their high. Socialism is not when the government does things. Socialism is not when the government has some level of higher levels of regulations. Okay, socialism. These are, if you have a free market, you have a capitalist market economy. Oh yeah, Gagin American is saying Republicans are crony capitalists. Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Republicans are so. PK saying my biggest problem with Republicans is their zero policy for climate change and, more shocking, outright denial of it. Yeah, just that by itself, okay, makes the Republican Party the most dangerous party on the planet. Okay, so the three greatest evils in this world are the BJP, the CCP, and the GOP, the Republican Party. Okay, and the fact that the GOP is the richest one of them and the most influential one of them, and the fact that they have this policy of ignoring climate change makes that party the most threat to humanity among all parties right now. Ibn Kaim saying, but would you say that the US is more capitalist than the Scandinavian countries? Um, more capitalist than Scandinavian countries. More capitalist than Scandinavian. No, I wouldn't say that. I would say that they have a different kind of capitalism. I don't know. I have to think about that because I would say more free. Okay, so the capitalism has freedom of markets as an essential part of its definition. Okay, but does that mean that the more free the market is, the more capitalist you are, or do you say I guess it depends on your definition. Okay, if the freer your market is, you define, if you see a capitalist market rather than a label, you see it as a spectrum, and you see that the more free you are more capitalist. If that's how you're defining capitalism, okay, then sure, the freer your market is, the more capitalist you are. Okay, but I think capitalism is a label. Okay, freedom is a spectrum. So I say that there are different brands of capitalism, and your brand has more freedom for the market, and their brand has less freedom for the market. If you want to look at it, because we don't have a word for capitalist, like we don't say more capitalist, we say more free. You're more capitalist, like I'm less capitalist. That is not how I've seen economists talk about countries. Like, oh, you say you have your markets are more free, you have less regulations. That's how they talk. So that's, to me, it seems like capitalist is a brand, it's a label that you stick on a market. Okay, it's less of a spectrum. But I guess you could go either way. Depends on you. I don't see a problem with looking at it like that. But the way I see it, do you have like, 3 or 4 brands of capitalism? We don't have one that is, because if you're more capitalist, the freer you are, then we don't have, then by that definition, we don't have any country in the world that is 100% capitalist. Like, we don't have any truly capitalist country in the world. So I don't see any utility with defining it like that. I would say that there are different brands of capitalism. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. But yeah, I rather talk about how free the market is. Anyways, let's go to the next question. Oh, we already did that one. Here. Kaz Lopez is saying, is it, and okay, I think that's, guys, the reason why sometimes it's hard for me to read these, because like you guys are not using proper, is it counterproductive? I'm just going to not read the on part. Is it counterproductive of those Islamic countries to condemn and rallying against India internationally? Okay, let me read this one more time. Is it counterproductive for Islamic countries, for some Islamic countries to condemn and rally against India internationally? I mean, they have diplomatic relationships. I'm going to say diplomatic relationships with India, and made leader Modi make compromises. I don't understand this question. But I don't think this will do anything in India of changing their minds on the minority rights, certainly Muslims. I just think they will see this selective outcry paternalistic, which will only fuel the Hindutva agenda. Okay, I understand the question. It's a good question, actually. You're saying, what's the point? Why are the Islamic countries doing what they're doing against India? It's not going to help the Muslims, because the Hindutva crowd, this is going to fuel them. They're not going to, it's not going to help the minorities in India. It's not going to help the minority Muslims in India, because the behavior of this community is not going to change. Okay. And this is just going to hurt their diplomatic relationships with India. Okay. So that's actually a very good question. I don't think the Islamic countries, the governments who are doing this against India, I don't think it's because they care about the Muslims in India. I think this is just a virtue signal that they have to do for their own community. Okay, so I think you're looking at this as like, why are they doing this? This is not going to help the Muslims. Why don't they do something? And this is going to hurt their relationships with India. I think that's what you're asking. Okay. I just think like this is meant for a domestic audience rather than for India itself, right? So this is meant for the religious community within those countries. They would not, given how big of an outcry this was, as soon as the first Islamic country stepped up and like says that we condemn this, right? The religious Muslims in other countries will be like, why are our Muslim leaders not saying anything like this, right? So they have to match it. They have to like virtue signal to religious, because a lot of these heads of state get their religious legitimacy from the fact that they are speaking for Muslims on behalf of Muslims. So they want to be able to send that virtual signal to the domestic ideas that we're doing what we're supposed to do, right? Or else they would be called out in their hypocrisy if they don't, right? Um, I mean, think about exactly how much the BJP, for example, decided to give in to their demands and call out these. But it worked, right? So, and all the religious people in Islamic countries, they're like, oh my, look, Modi and the BJP, they bend the knee. So they enjoy that. They're like, look, our leaders managed to do something. We hate Modi so much. We hate the BJP so much. And they had to submit to our will. Like, we have the power here. Like, you think you could bully Muslims in your country, but you have to be answerable to us. And we made you submit to us. Yeah, like, hey, look, we will take care of our fellow brothers, Muslim brothers and sisters, if you mistreat them. So this was a huge win for the Muslims in these other countries, because they make sure that they make it like, you need our relationships, you need our money. And that's why a lot of Hindutva in India, they were angry. They were like, why did the BJP like apologize? Why did they bend the knee, right? So they were very angry. And the fact that they're so angry with the BJP shows how important it is for the leaders to. So it's competing. There's international pressure, but there's domestic pressure, right? So these Islamic countries, they gave in to the domestic demands over the international one, and they got their reward for it from the because the BJP bend the knee. And look, the BJP decided to play the international game rather than the domestic one, because they could have been like, screw you guys, this is how it is, go get effed. But they decided to go play the international game, and they apologized, and they came out and say they were wrong. And now they're paying the price domestically, right? So you have to choose which one is more important. Is the international relationship or the domestic legitimacy? But given that India is not a country, okay, so here's why the Islamic countries feel free that they can push India around like this, right? Because India is more rational than they are, okay? India is not going to, than many of them. Like, think about India versus Iran. Iran's government has destroyed its economy over ideology. Like, given that they have certain values and they're not willing to negotiate on those values and those ideals and the goals that they have, okay, they have sacrificed international relationships and their own economy because they're so stubborn, right? And because their economy, and they are paying, Iranian people are paying a heavy price for it. India is a country that, as much as ideological as the BJP is, they're not as crazy, okay? They're not willing to sacrifice international relationships to that extent, okay? They, like, maybe internally they're more ideological than a lot of countries, and but internationally they haven't gone far as being as loony as as a country like, for example, like Iran, right? So knowing that India will not values its international relationships more than some of these Islamic countries like Iran, they know that maybe we could pressure them with with threatening their international relationships, and it worked. So accepting your partner as a rational actor when it comes to international relationships makes you able to push them a little bit more heavily. Do you understand what I'm saying? Asian American says, if only Muslim nations stood up to China in the same way. I mean, I'm not saying that because I said that so many times when Susanna and I covered this news. So in the news segment, we covered this news, and I just went so heavy, like so aggressively against the Islamic countries because they haven't done anything this aggressive over China. Okay, but I'm not gonna do that again because I have like said that. So I said that a lot during that episode. Darker is saying so they are playing the ultimate game of chicken with India. Well, I mean, yeah, the ultimate game of chicken, but knowing that India is not going to sacrifice its economy over something so petty, right? They're like, India, like, oh my God, I thought we were petty, but these people are extra petty. Like over this, like, sure, like, do we have to give them an apology just so we could keep our relationships economically with them? Let's give them an apology. But again, we need to give them because that is important. The economy matters. International relationship matters. India recognizes that. Hindus, we're gonna have domestically. Some people are gonna get angry, but okay, we already know that these people are crazy anyways. Like they know that that is more important. So like the Hindutva people figures in India who are angry with the government, they're angry because their government is acting like an adult. Okay, is putting economy and international relationships ahead of unimportant like ideological battles between like one individual on a TV. A PK saying leaders in the Middle East don't give a damn about Muslims in India. Yeah, I know, that's what I said. They don't give a damn. This is just politics. The problem with this particular case was that Nupur Sharma made remarks against the Prophet. Yeah. So yeah, it's not about if. Yeah, I mean, they even guys, you don't even have to think about CCP. Even Muslims in India, the same Muslim countries didn't say much about against India's government when Muslims in India were being attacked. It's the Prophet who's attacked that makes them angry, not Muslims. I mean, maybe sometimes they condemn the acts of violent acts against Muslims, but not to this extent. They all got united over a comment, right? Like when a Muslim family is killed or like beaten up or like oppressed or discriminated against, or if there's any act of violence, do you see this level of unity against Muslims? This is not at all about protecting Muslims. This is about pleasing the crowd that we defended the Prophet. Somebody's saying this is not petty, Armin. It's just that two businessmen who back Modi have significant investments in the Middle East. Well, I'm saying they're not being petty. I'm saying this is over business. This is over relationships. I'm saying that that's what I'm saying. I'm saying India is not being petty. The Muslim countries are. PK is saying the simple thing is that Indians are poor and need the Middle East the more need the Middle East more than they need us. That is not true. Okay, first of all, even if you're a rich country, this would matter. You don't want to sacrifice. You will like economy matters. Even if you're rich, you don't want to ruin. Oh, we're rich. Let's get poor now because we're like sacrificing our relationships with other countries and our business ties with other countries, right? Yeah. So, and it's not true. Like India is a major economy. I don't know who needs more who needs which sides more, but the other side needs India. But it's just that their population is so ideological. I guess more ideological than the Hindutva is. Okay, so India is like giving into these loons or the economy. India shows the economy. Those countries are like giving into loons or the economy. They're like giving into loons. Our loons are crazier than your loons, so we have to give into our loons. Okay, but I don't know exactly who needs. It's not about like, oh, they need us more than we need them. It doesn't matter. You need them a lot. India is a giant economy. You can't just sacrifice that. You can't just cut ties with India. You will suffer. But I guess yeah. Yeah, they are being pragmatic. Ibn Qiyam is saying India is the bottom 20% of countries in the world for GDP per capita. GDP per capita. Okay, let me bring this. This is why you guys need to learn more economy. Okay, what you should care about is GDP, not GDP per capita. It doesn't matter how, when it comes to your weight, to your strength internationally as a country, it doesn't matter how poor your people are. It matters how much money as a whole country you have. So your GDP matters, not your GDP per capita. This is why China, guys, China is an economic heavyweight. Even though their people are poor, Chinese people are poor, China economically is the second most powerful country because the GDP per capita of China is low, but the GDP is high, very high. So India is a major country when it comes economically. Don't look at look at all these slums, look at all the poor people. Yeah, that's GDP per capita. The GDP is big because they have a lot of people. So they get to threaten people with their economy. They get to do that. They like people want India as a market. People want to sell to India. People want to buy from India. It's okay. What is the GDP ranking? GDP ranking India. You're looking at GDP per capita. Fifth. Are you serious? India's economy? Yeah, guys, it's number 5 from the top. You're looking at 20 from the bottom. You're saying it's at the bottom 20%. Is the 5th biggest economy from the top. Only 4 countries above India. That's huge. You can't mess with that. You can't be like, oh, let's get rid of India. Like, let's not sell to India. Okay. I guess you want to just trash your entire economy, just closing the 5th largest economy to your entire market. Okay, Ibn Bayam is saying, I never said India was not a heavyweight player in terms of total GDP. Okay, but that's the only thing that matters. Like, you're highlighting the GDP per capita. Okay, GDP per capita matters when we're saying like, okay, how are people doing? Okay, when it comes to international relationship and we want to see who has the biggest punch, okay, we look at GDP. Okay, so in the context of what we're speaking right now, it's not GDP per capita that you should pay attention to. In the context of what we're speaking right now, GDP, total GDP is what matters. Okay, Nanda is saying GDP per capita is very important. Yes, GDP per capita is the most important metric that you could look at. I didn't say it's not important. I said within the context of different countries working against each other, or like as leverage, as a way, like when your economy, your India is going against China, against Russia, like we're seeing like who has the highest leverage, who has the highest negotiating power. In that context, what you should be looking at is total GDP. I never said GDP per capita doesn't matter. GDP per capita, increasing GDP per capita is the ultimate goal of all economic discussions. That's where everything leads to right now, because we don't have better metrics. Okay, so you could have better metrics, but right now, that is the ultimate goal: increasing GDP per capita. Even the whole point of increasing GDP is to increase GDP per capita. That's what everything is about. All right, let's go. Oh, we already read this one. Remove this. Okay, Oxymoron is saying it's a typical. This is Oxymoron's answer to this. Okay, so everything else right now from here is just commentary in this. Should I read this? No, these are not questions. These are just comments. Okay. I'm just gonna post the link for anybody who wants to come live on air and talk to me. I'm gonna say Ask your questions live on air. And it's going to be only available to members. All channel members. All right, so on the community tab, I posted a link. If you are a YouTube member, you could come up on and talk to me live on air, ask questions, or add any comments or anything. But for now, I will just read some of your comments. If you guys want to ask anything, okay, here, PK is saying total GDP matters for gauging the powers of a country. Per capita matters for wealth of individuals. Yeah, pretty much. Ibn Qiyam saying, just in the gym at the moment, we'll jump in 5 minutes. Okay, cool. Is it leg day? What is it? Is it leg day, chest day? Don't skip leg day, Ibn Qiyam. Don't skip leg day. Oxymoron is saying Israel, KSA, Saudi Arabia, Russia, even Pakistan matters more than India in international politics. If it wasn't for Chinese, it would be irrelevant. What do you mean? Okay, so I don't think so. I don't think that's true. KSA. Okay, so I think you guys are. You don't. Okay, sometimes the reason why a country matters more in international politics is because they are ideological. Okay, sometimes a country matters would have mattered a lot more if they weren't so crazy. If they were crazy, like for example, let me see. For example, okay, so for example, let me see. Let me give you an example. This should be a good illustration. Okay, so which one do you think has a bigger GDP, Canada or Saudi Arabia? Okay, so I'm looking. Canada's GDP is $1.6 trillion. Saudi Arabia's GDP is $700 billion. So Canada has a bigger GDP than Saudi Arabia. But which one is more important in international politics? Saudi Arabia. Okay, Saudi Arabia has a lot of oil, and Saudi Arabia uses that oil as a way as leverage to and also against a whole bunch to get favors from a whole bunch of countries, right? And also Saudi Arabia has been the source of a lot of ideological viewpoints that has been a danger to a bunch of, they exported Wahhabism. They built a whole bunch of madrasas in Pakistan, Indonesia, Afghanistan, and a lot of people outside of Saudi Arabia have been paying a heavy price for it. Okay, but Canada is a very boring country. Like internationally, even though they matter more economically, they don't matter that much because everybody assumes Canada is going to behave the way they behave predictably, right? So I'm just saying, like India, for example, if India was like a more ideological country and they wanted to use its economy as a way to threaten other countries, if it or use its economy as a way to spread its ideology, all of a sudden it would become a bigger in international politics, it would become a bigger deal. Okay, but I'm just saying you shouldn't want that. The fact that your country is more sane and acts predictably on an international stage. So, for example, India might sometimes do things that we find crazy from their internal politics, but internationally they're not that as crazy as some other countries like Iran or Saudi Arabia or even Pakistan. Okay, or China. So being a boring ass country on an international stage makes you predictable, makes that should be what you want, because if you're predictable when it comes to investors, it's less risky to invest in you. So it's good for your investment if you're not such a wild card on an international stage. Anyways, Evan Kiam is here. Hey,
hello. You all right?
How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too. Just left the gym.
Oh, good.
Having a banana. Yeah.
Yeah. Wait. Can you say so? Predictability is a bad thing on an international politics? No, I'm saying it's a good thing. I'm saying like the fact that you're not using it as leverage to do so many things. Like you should be using your economy as a way to force people to do things very selectively. Because if you want, your economy shouldn't be used as a weapon. Okay, because if you use your economy as a weapon to like, hey, do this for me or do that for me, or else I'm going to pull out of your market, or else I'm going to put tariffs on a trade with you. Okay, then investors are going to be like, oh my God, their economy is being used as a political weapon, so we don't know what they're going to do tomorrow. Okay, like if they all of a sudden they might cut trade with this, like we might like start a business chain with them. And all of a sudden, we might lose after 10 years of investment. We might lose everything because they're looking at their economy as if it's like something like a hammer to hit on people's heads, right? So, not letting your politics just be predictable and not using it as a weapon, and for you to be less influential politically because your economy is not used as a weapon is a good thing for your economy. Even if you want to use it, you have to be very selective. So investors, you don't spook investors away. That's what I'm saying. Anyways, why do you said sorry, I keep saying it wrong. You say you don't do leg days. Why don't you do? You say I don't work legs. They are way too big already. Okay, so
it's because if I work legs, I don't fit into my trousers anymore. Do you know, after like say a couple of months? So I need to buy a new pair of underpants, trousers, etc. every bloody month. So I don't bother doing it. By the way, I've got a bit of an issue, Armin. Do you know StreamYard? I can't get it to connect to my headphones or anything else. It will only connect to my phone, so I can only speak through my phone. I can't hear anything. I can only hear it through the phone. I can't hear it through my headphones.
You can't use the setting options and then click on audio?
Yeah, even when I change it, it's still the same. It won't. It defaults back to the phone, but that's just an issue of mine. I'll try and resolve that. But by the way, just talking about working out, have you seen Mohammed Hijab workout videos yet?
No, where does he post it?
On his channel.
Wait, he does?
Yeah, if you go back like a couple of weeks, like a month, he's got workout videos on there.
Is it any good?
Yeah, the guy can bench 130 kg for 6 reps. That's crazy, man. That's like I think. Yeah, so his 1 rep max for a bench press will be about 151 kg, which is about, I don't know how much that is in pounds, maybe 350.
That's crazy.
It's nuts, mate. But I think he weighs like over 100 kg himself, so bench press is kind of reliant on body weight. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
But
I don't know, but
depends
on, I don't know. And a lot of people do go to the gym to get. Why do you go to the gym?
Or just I wanted to lift heavy weights, so I want to increase my strength essentially. So I do a 5x4 program. So I do with bench press, I do overhead press, I do deadlifts, and I try and go up 2.5 kg each time. Each time I go gym. So the goal is to kind of, because I've only started going back last week, so I'm trying to. Yeah.
I just think a lot of people go to the gym just to get stronger and stronger and stronger, and I'm always like, for what reason? Like, because I think like I've had a certain level, right? And at some point I would like, I could save a little time by just staying. Like I am at a good part, at a good place right now. Okay. All I have to do is maintain what I have, because why do I need to get stronger than this? Like, I'm not going to go to any battle anytime soon with anybody, right? Like, I don't understand the utility of getting any stronger than this. So I go to the gym, and I have to spend once I got to the part where I'm happy, I'm like, I could spend half as time, because maintaining what you have is so much less time consuming than getting better. Especially once you get to a certain strength, getting better becomes so difficult, right? So you could spend one third of the time that you used to spend in the gym after you reach the person you like, and to be able to maintaining is so much easier, right? I'm like, why am I wasting so much time in the gym getting that one extra rep anymore, where I could just do more stuff, other things, and just go to the gym and spend less time. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I think for me it's motivation. So each time you see yourself progressing each week, I know it gets harder and harder as you get heavier and heavier, and that's where you're more likely to get injured the heavier you go anyway. But I think it's more to do with actually seeing that progression. So you're going up step by step. Whereas if you're just stuck on like the same weight and you're just doing the same weight, you can't see the progression in your mind. So I think it's just a mind thing that you can see a progress.
Progress for what reason? I mean, I could progress in something else. I could spend that time that I'm progressing in this because I want to progress in things that have utility for me. Okay, like look, I have enough muscle weight on my body. Look, this is pretty, this is good enough. Like, why do I need anything more, right? So I could still, for my ego, I could still progress. I could do it like in other things. Like, what is the utility of the extra body strength? Like, where is it going to be helpful for me?
In real life, it won't help you unless, like, even if you're carrying heavy equipment, you only need to get to a certain strength level, and then it's really, you don't need any more. But I think, and also another thing is, once you get to your limit, right, then the only way to increase your strength is either by taking steroids or by getting fat, essentially. So you have to just consume more calories, and you get to a point where you can't consume enough to stay trim and still be strong. And you have to basically end up putting on fat. So, and that's not healthy, to be honest. So you're right on that one. Yeah, you're right on that one. But I've got a question for you, Armin.
Go ahead.
Do you remember when you guys reviewed The Lady of Heaven and you got DMCA striked?
Yes.
Well, that film came. Yeah. Sorry, that film came out in the UK last week. Did you hear about it?
I did hear that it came out, and I heard that they closed it in a whole bunch of places because of the controversy.
Yeah. There was a bunch of basically Sunni protesters. It was mainly Brailvi and Deobandi. It was less so Salafis, but mainly Brailvi, Deobandis who were protesting the film because, number one, it depicts the Prophet Muhammad, and number two, it puts the companions and Aisha in a bad light. And so there was a series of demonstrations in the UK, and some of the cinemas they stopped the viewing of the film, but there was a couple of others that kept it going. So you can still view it in cinema today. It's just a couple of the chains are not showing it anymore, but some of them are. So that's essentially what's happening.
But some Shias are against it as well.
Yeah, some Shias are against it, but I think most of them kind of, from what I've seen, they ideologically agree with the film's its portrayal, but they don't want to create controversy between Shia and Sunni in the UK. That's why they might be against it.
So guys, there's just about the movie The Lady of Heaven. Okay, the Sunnis are obviously against it because it shows Omar as somebody bad. It shows Aisha as somebody bad. It depicts Muhammad. It depicts Ali as well, right? It doesn't show their face though, but still depicts them, right? So
it doesn't show Fatima's face. I know it doesn't show Fatima's face. It shows her just in light. Yeah.
Does it show Muhammad's face?
Yeah, it does. It does show Muhammad's face, but they say it's it does. Yeah. But they say it wasn't played by an actor. This is their claim. They say it was portrayed by a CGI kind of animation, which I think might be even more disrespectful.
Okay, that's not your Shias. Shias don't think you can do that. What the hell?
No, they say you can. They say you can. They say within Shia Islam, Yasser al-Habib, who is the scholar behind the movie, he's a controversial scholar here in the UK. He actually, do you know, on Aisha's death, they celebrate it with a cake and a party, etc., in his compound down south. But he actually. He's the mastermind behind the film in terms of the inspiration of the story. Yeah.
I think there's a disagreement on this in Shias because I know in Iran is like depicting Muhammad's face, even with drawing, it's a big no-no. Okay.
So, Iran Shias are like Sunni Shias, basically, aren't they? I think they follow more Bukhari than Sunnis, to be honest, from what I've seen.
No. Okay. So So the Sunnis are obviously against this because it shows Omar and Aisha in a bad light. Okay, the Shias' disagreement over this is for two reasons. One, the Shias who are saying like this is just gonna cause fight between Sunnis and Shias, but also the Velayat Faqih Shias are against this movie because of political reasons. So this movie was made by a brand of Shia Muslims that are called the Shirazi, Shias.
Yeah. I know. Yeah.
And they are ideologically at war with Velayat Faqih, which is the Shias that are ruling Iran right now. And that's because this is made by them, they're politically against it as well. By the way, Idris, you jump in anytime you want. Idris is here as well.
I was just wondering, Armin, what do you think of the protests then against the film? Because that's what's caused the most controversy here. The actual protests against the film in around cinemas, etc., throughout the north of England.
I just think it's the best marketing. Like, more people are going to see it because of it, right? Like, this is like, I mean, a lot of people are going to be curious, don't you?
Yeah, I agree, but like I saw the response to the protest by do you know Nuria Khan from the Harry Sultan show, and she said by protesting they're breaking the law by protesting. And this is a person who wants to be a solicitor. She's doing a master's in law. She thinks protesting against a film, peacefully protesting, because I went to the protests. I actually went to one of the protests, and there was no violence, there was no calls for any attacks on Shia or anything like that. But she thinks that they should either stay home, right, or they should go watch the film. I mean, this is the UK. You have a right to peacefully protest. How else do you show?
What's her argument?
Her argument is that if you're living in Britain and we don't have blasphemy laws, then you can't protest against the film. That's what she thinks. She's so retarded. I mean, she's like, there's something wrong with her, I think.
Hey, be nice. Like, why are you being so rude?
But that's what she actually is. She's a retard, so we have to be honest.
No? Okay, so first of all, I don't know if you're misrepresenting her. Maybe, like, that's not her legal opinion. Maybe that's her, like,
It's still retarded.
Okay, so for example, if I say, like, hey, you should put the milk in the fridge right after you use it, okay? And then you're like, you think it should be legal? I'm like, no, that's just my opinion. I didn't say that it should be legal. I just said, like, I think you shouldn't do that. Like, so for example,
no, she actually said someone came on the show and said, oh, Muslims. So a Muslim came on the show and said, oh, we should follow British laws, etc. Do you know, when we're living in a non-Muslim country? She said, how are you following British laws by protesting against this film? So she's actually talking to the legality of the situation.
Okay, I don't know. Maybe you're misrepresenting her. Okay,
I'm not.
But also, okay, but I have to hear myself. I don't know what her argument is. Okay, but people have bad opinions or wrong opinions, and you could just, like, tell them why they're wrong. Why do you have to, like? I'm sure I have some wrong opinions. You know what I mean? Like,
well, I've tried my best to explain to these people how why they're wrong, etc. They don't seem to be able to learn. They lack the ability to learn things. So it seems to be an issue with these two people in particular, Harry Sultan and Nuria Khan, where they seem to have an inability to learn.
Okay, but I just think there's nicer way of, like, you have a better opportunity at getting people to listen to you if you were nicer about it. You know what I mean?
I tried to be nice. I've tried to be nice, and it's quite clear. I come across better, but if they don't learn anything from being nice, then you have to be harsh. Another opinion she had last week, for example, was there was a news story in which they said 45% of hate crimes in the UK are conducted towards Muslims. Now, considering they only make up 5% of the population, that's quite high. Consider, almost half of the hate crimes are towards one particular group, which represent 5% of the population. And the news story said that the government were going to dictate a certain sum of money to tackle these hate crimes. And her response was, why are the government wasting money on this group of people when they are the ones? We as ex-Muslims need protection. We as ex-Muslims need protection. Why are they dedicating money to these lot? I mean, what a sick individual! You come from a story in which 45% of hate crimes are towards a particular group, and then it's all about her. It's all about her group. It's all about whataboutism. It's all about this and that. He said this group of people, the 45%, they are dedicating hate towards us.
Can you send me the, because I don't know, she's not here to put things in the correct light or stuff, right? Can you send me the clips
I'll send you it on email. I'll send you the clips.
Because I don't know if this is a misrepresentation. I don't know if it's correct. Okay.
You can watch it for yourself. Also, Harris Sultan recently, with regards to the protests in India, by Muslims, etc. This was his response. I feel sorry for Indians who have to live with 200 million of these people. That was his response to that.
Wait, say that
so
again?
He basically, so with regards to the recent protests in India by Muslims against, the so-called blasphemy nonsense, right? He said, it's so sad that India has to cope and live with 200 million of these people, these Muslims. Like, he's essentializing a whole group of people, including children, right? Because that includes, if including 200 million people, including the children and whatnot, and he's essentializing a whole group of people, saying that
I
thought
Harris Sultan was very careful about.
He's not careful. Watch his channel. He's stupid. He can't think. He can't think.
I actually saw a recent video of him saying that, making it very clear that we're against Islam and we defend Muslims and we defend their rights.
He'll make those statements, and then he'll make a statement like the one that I've just mentioned. So he's completely incoherent. That's just why I think it's important to have.
He says I remember watching him his channel. He says that he loves Muslim because his family members are Muslims. Like, how could he not love Muslims? That's.
But then why would he make a statement like that then?
Okay, so here's the thing. I've noticed that a lot of people are not careful about generalization language, but when you pin them down, they are and ask them about their views. Their views are not as generalized, but they haven't practiced not speaking in generalized terms. But their views are not collective, but they're not as careful about how they speak, even though that it doesn't represent their views. So it's not their views.
Even if it doesn't represent his views, the fact that he's putting that out to his audience,
I agree.
Really
I agree. If that's how he's speaking, I agree with that criticism. I just want to make it clear that it might not actually be how he thinks, and he needs to be told that this is this way of talking about a collective is dangerous.
Well, I told him having an ethical framework is important in terms of arriving at consistent conclusions, but he thinks that that's nonsense, that's rubbish, that you don't have to think about.
It's hard for me to judge. It's hard for me to comment about things where I haven't seen the actual content, and when they themselves are not here to.
I'll send you the links. I'll send you all the links. Okay. And as part of that, obviously, I'll just make a final comment with regard to this. As part of that talk about Indian Muslims, there was an instance where one guy, his daughter's like a prominent activist, right? Prominent Muslim activist. And he had his house knocked down, right? And because they say, in Uttar Pradesh, that is, because they said he was he was one of the people that were instigating the protests. The house actually belonged to his wife. It wasn't even in his name. They still knocked it down. She had nothing to do with the protests, right? And Harry said, that you don't blame the Indian government for that. Blame the Muslims, blame the mullahs for that. Blame the mullahs. So he's got this framework where all Muslims are to blame for the actions of some. And I think that's completely unacceptable.
Okay. That would be completely unacceptable if that's his view, but I don't know. Again, I don't you should send me the clips because that doesn't sound like something Harris would say.
Well, he privates his live streams, but if I find the thingy on one of his, the clips that he puts out, because I watched the live stream in full.
That's not at all something like what that Harris would say.
He did say that. I promise you.
Sometimes I've noticed that I don't know about this because sometimes people tell me somebody said this. I promise you. Okay, and then when I go and listen to the actual recording, they said something similar, but there was the reporting of it to me had a spin on it. It was more about the interpretation of the person listening to the comment rather than the comment itself. So that's why I have to be skeptical. You know what I mean?
Okay, I will do my best to find the clips. If not, I'll subscribe to his channel. I'll pay the whatever pounds it is, and I'll send you the full live stream and give you timestamps. Okay, if I can't find the clips. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Cool. I'll let Idris speak.
Okay, Idris, speak. Sorry you were waiting all this time, and I'm hoping because last time he had to leave.
Do you hear me correctly?
Yes.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you, do you feel like America's constitution might be outdated, so much so
Yes.
that it's maybe it can be reformed through, because I've um, I've come to consider that people often talk about Roman history, like the Civil War, Caesar, etc., but they don't mention that the cause of the Civil War was social social trouble all along. Like it was a very complicated subject, I think, where people like Caesar were the only one putting forward reform, but they wanted power for themselves, and the conservative were trying to protect the institution, but they were trying to block reform too, and so it felt like kind of a trap situation. And I mean, sometimes
Well, I think the United States have worshipped the Constitution so much, too much. Like the attitude towards like this document being okay. So here's the thing. Okay, the Constitution of the United States is one of the best out there. Okay, it's not the best out there, but when it comes to constitutions, it's close to the top. It's really really good. Okay, but really really good does not mean without flaws. It has a lot of flaws. Okay, and I think a lot of Americans have become too arrogant about how their constitution is, and they have gone from our constitution is pretty good to our constitution is like the Quran or like a revelation from God, and like these people were like like everything. I mean, these were as good as smart as the founding fathers of the United States were. Okay, there's no human that lived back then that could have foreseen all the things that we needed, all the ways that humanity will progress and the things that we need. You know what I mean? So I think they made it's good to make changing the constitution difficult, okay, but I think like the United States has made it a bit too difficult. Like adding amendments to the United States constitution is difficult in normal times, but now this American politics have become so polarized that it has become close to impossible. Like before, it was difficult. Now it's almost impossible changing the constitution and adding amendments and stuff like that. It's like nobody. I haven't seen any legal expert to even put that part of their consideration for that to be a possibility. You know what I mean? That's how. But that's insane because obviously times change and technology changes, people change, economies changes. So you need to be able to adapt somewhat. I know you don't want to be able to change the constitution willy-nilly, but some level of adaptation is needed. And given that a polarized politics in the United States has made changing the constitution almost impossible, that means that it's that part, the I mean, the changing of it, because I'm assuming that changing the constitution, the methods of changing the constitution is also written in the constitution itself. Is that how it is? Because I think so. If that is a flaw, then it's a self-destructive flaw. Like at some point, I mean, we see this flaw, right? We see like basic human rights are not something that is covered completely in the United States Constitution. A constitution is something that is meant to limit the dictatorship of the majority. Like so, the democracy is absolute democracy is dictatorship of the majority, right? And a constitution is a piece of document that could turn a country from just being an absolute democracy to a liberal democracy. And a liberal democracy is a democracy where it has limitations to the rule of the many. Okay, and the rule of the limitations are supposed to be protecting basic human rights, especially for minority groups, especially for group any group of people that are usually a target of any form of oppression or discrimination, right? So, given that the Constitution at the time was written, where we understood that women should have equal rights, that I don't know, slavery is not okay. So certain things were covered, okay, but it doesn't cover like trans rights. It doesn't cover gay rights. It doesn't cover a whole bunch of basic human rights that internationally we recognize that these should be covered in basic human rights. So like internationally, like the Human Rights Declaration and whatever the United Nations says, that it's a lot more amendable. So now we're in a situation where the United States used to be ahead of the international world, international body institutions. But now, because they're amendable and United States citizens, now they're ahead of the United States. So the United States is now behind because they cannot add these basic human rights, and it should be able to, right? So now United States Constitution is not limiting enough. It's not limiting the rule of the majority enough to cover things that we know internationally it should be covering. Do you understand what I'm saying? So the way that they try to do, the way that instead of trying to change the Constitution to cover other basic human rights, what they try to do is try to reinterpret everything that is already there to make it seem to make it seem like it's covering other people as well, right? So they're like, so for example, if you look at protecting women's right to choose, there's nothing in the Constitution that covers that basic human right. So they had to go and look at the right to privacy in the Constitution and somehow use that in a way to use the right to privacy as a way to give abortion rights to women. But we know that if any good constitution that covers the right to choose for women would just have that explicitly in there, instead of you having to reinterpret the privacy, your right to privacy for your right to abortion, right? So, for example, if we want to provide gay rights based on the Constitution to people, we try to use the sex the limitation to the banning of sex-based discrimination in the Constitution. We try to somehow argue that also covers sexual orientation-based discrimination. But we have to do that because the Constitution right now is not advanced enough to cover that. So we have to take what we have and somehow make it seem like it covers everything else. But that means it's a flawed Constitution, because a better Constitution would just have that written explicitly in there.
Yeah, I agree.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Ibn Khan, what do you think?
Sorry, I'm just driving. Just 1 second. I'm just going to park up now.
Oh no! Don't. No, it's fine. Kenny in the live chat is saying democracy is two wolves and a sheep deciding what to eat. A constitution is what ensures the sheep doesn't become dinner. So yeah, so guys, like, you remember, this is kind of like capitalism, right? So we like capitalism because it works, but you can't just let it loose willy-nilly, okay? Because it works so well that we eat everything in its way, okay? So like capitalism is like, for example, it's like a knife, okay? It's very useful, but you can't just have no limitations to its use, because if you have no limitation, people are going to go stabby on each other, okay? You want it for surgery, you want to cut vegetables. It's a very, very powerful and useful tool, okay? Just like capitalism, but you want limitations, okay? Democracy, like capitalism, is a very, very powerful tool, okay? You want democracy, but just like you don't want capitalism without limitations, you don't want democracy without limitations, because democracy without limitations means that the majority could oppress the minority. Because if the majority gets to decide whatever they want, then the majority could decide that we want slaves, and they could make slaves in the minority into slaves, right? So you want to limit the democracy. And usually the way you limit the majority is with a constitution. Limited democracy, limited capitalism.
Hey, I mean, I'm home now. I can speak. It's all right.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
You don't have to
No,
talk.
it's all right. I was just parking up anyway. There's actually a good article. When I was in law school, we read an article from Ronald Dworkin, who was the most prominent legal scholar in the 21st century. And it actually discusses about the tyranny of the majority, etc., and how law should be applied, taking into consideration minority rights. It's called Something of Hedgehogs. And it might be worth actually reading the article. I remember the name of the article, Something of Hedgehogs. But we read it in I think it's one of the best things I've read on this topic, on how law is associated to morality and how it should protect the minority opinion while still not enforcing, but promoting the majoritarian, part of the democratic process. But it's well worth reading.
It's in summary, it's called a liberal. A lot of people say liberal democracies, right? And they don't understand that that's a contradiction, right? Liberal democracy, that these are two forces that are working against each other. Okay, democracy is working against liberalism. Liberalism is working against democracy. Okay, democracy says whatever the majority says goes. Liberalism, it says there are certain things that are part of our certain rights that you don't get, the majority doesn't get to rule. There are certain principles that is not up for discussions. That's what liberalism tells you. Okay, so when you have a liberal democracy, you're trying to come up with the forces of liberalism and the forces of democracy fighting with each other, and you find the best outcome. You try to find the best outcome between these two.
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely on that. Sorry if I was angry earlier. I came out of the gym and I was passionate about what had happened in the past week, and but yeah,
it's testosterone. It was testosterone pumping, maybe.
It was, yeah. I actually cut my workout short so I could have a chat with you today. So I didn't do the deadlift.
Sorry.
I didn't do the deadlift. So I've got one more question, Armin, if you want to answer it. Did you watch the recent debate with Vosh and that trans debate on?
I'm halfway through it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. No, go on.
So I briefly watched it, and I want to go through it again just to, because it was a kind of, it's something you need to kind of listen to carefully before you can come to arrive at a conclusion. But I thought that the Christian guy on the other side, the one who was arguing against trans rights, the PhD guy, he put up his arguments against Vosh were pertinent, because Vosh seemed to be using like a circular definition of what it means to be a female. What do you think?
I think that this is a trick that a lot of people play against trans rights, okay? And here's the simple trick, okay? They try to change the discussion, okay? We're trying to say, why can't trans women just be women, okay? Why can't we just call them women, okay? They change, all of a sudden ignore the discussion, and they're like, is there a good definition for the word woman? Okay? If you want to fight that fight, and they're saying there's no good definition for the word woman, and you want to argue that there is a good definition for the word woman, well, they win. But that is not the fight. Okay? So it's a very good, because you think that as a person who says trans woman should be able to be called woman, or should be considered woman, okay? You think that means that you should have a good definition for the word woman. And because you already assume that, when they say like, okay, there is no good definition for the word woman, they are taking you out of one battlefield and moving you to a battlefield that they can win. You were in a battlefield that you could win, and they know that that's a losing battlefield because you're talking about people's rights and stuff, and they're moving it to a battlefield where they have the upper hand, but you think, you have wrongly assumed that you should be able to also win this battlefield to be able to win the other one. And that's a trick that I noticed they do. But the thing is that I could just give them that. It's so easy. Here's the thing. What's the meaning of woman? I'm going to say, there's no good definition. Like, oh, this definition is inconsistent. This definition doesn't make it clear. This definition doesn't have good lines. I'm like, yeah, they are all crappy definitions. And we don't have a good word definition. There's no word. There's no good word. This doesn't clarify anything.
But I guess, sorry.
Yeah. No, but I'm saying we use so many other words that we have utility without a very clear and useful. No, they are useful. Okay, sorry. There are useful definitions, but there are not very good definitions. Here's the thing. When we're talking about words, we use words to our day-to-day life, we don't have as a strict guideline for what those definitions are as we do in a scientific community. You know what I mean? So, for example, when you're writing a legal document or you're writing a scientific document, the definitions of words that you use there need to be very clear about where the lines are, what's in that category, what's outside of that category, what it's referring to, okay? But when I say, hey, Ibn Qayyim, he's an awesome dude. Okay, he's so awesome, right? I like him. He's such a great guy. Okay, well, Armin, what is the definition of awesome? What is the definition? Like, who exactly falls? What are the criteria? What are the exact criteria for somebody to fall within the definition of awesome, and the exact criteria where you fall out of it? Like, I don't know. I never thought about it. I don't get but this definition contradicts how you use it over there, and this definition contradicts with your earlier definition, because this definition is I don't care. Okay, yeah, fine. We don't have a good definition, but does that mean that the word awesome doesn't have utility? Should we stop using the word awesome on each other? Like, you should not be able to call people awesome unless you have a very accurate that is a definition of the word awesome that is not self-contradictory. Like, no, the word has utility. Okay, I'm not writing an academic paper when I'm talking about Ibn Qayyim, okay, being awesome. Okay, I'm just noticing that this has utility in our day-to-day life, and I think we should be able to use it. And I think people should be able to call themselves. I can say I'm awesome. Okay, even though I don't know exactly have a definition for it. Okay. So the word woman right now is it's just like a loose definition of some things that we would like to call woman. Okay, that's what it is. The thing, woman is what the things that we want to call woman. That's what woman is. Okay.
Right. No, I agree with your perspective on that, and I think that's something that Vosh was trying to argue in the debate as well. Now, I think you've answered this question. What your definition would, in terms of woman, what would your definition be? But I think you've just answered that right now, haven't you? As to
but that's not a good definition. But I'm admitting that that's not a good definition, because it's a definition that is self-referring to itself. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree, and I think that was the argument the other guy was trying to make. I think he thinks he has a stronger definition of what a woman is, and he's saying that because Vosh's definition is self-referential, that's a weaker definition.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Yeah. I admit that. I will admit that, because people think think that if you have a weak definition, therefore it has no utility. Okay, but why can't we just give them that? When people say that you don't have a good definition for women, and your definition is not a good definition because no good definition is self-referential, why can't we be like, yeah, I agree, it's not a good definition. We don't have a good definition. And your point being, I think
his argument is that his definition is a strong definition of what a woman is, whereas ours is weak. So he's saying mine is stronger. We should use my definition because it's a stronger definition of what woman is, whereas our definition is a far weaker definition because it's self-referential, like you mentioned, and therefore we should use his definition of what a woman is, which is someone who is an adult female. Essentially, that's what he was trying to claim.
Okay, I don't know what his claim exactly is, but my advice to people is to just give that to them and then say, so what, and then watch them just look at you shocked. Okay,
but then they would argue. Sorry, you finish. Sorry.
No, I'm just saying, it's like, hey, you're a woman. You don't have you're using the word woman, but your definition of woman is not a very good definition. I'm like, yeah, it's not. Okay, and it's not a good definition. It has utility. I don't need a good definition. And then then what are you going to go from there?
Because then they would argue that because their definition is stronger, they can promote their definition better than we can, and therefore trans women would not be classed as women under their definition.
No, the utility of words is not dependent on solid definitions. You know what I mean? Like the word awesome, for example, has utility. Okay. So for example, there are some in academia, all right, or in a legal framework, a strong definition is required. Okay, but for our communication, for social interactions, strong, very consistent definition is not required for words to have utilities.
I think Blair White had a really good analogy. She said if she's in a waiting in a restaurant and someone was looking for her, that someone would say, oh, I'm looking for that girl in an orange shirt, and they don't need to go into the definition of a trans woman or what a woman is. They're just using the word woman for its descriptive purposes. That, oh, it's that woman over there in the orange shirt. You don't have to go into all of that technical jargon and medical history to talk about what a woman is to validate someone's experience. She was talking about this in context with Ben Shapiro.
Yeah, I mean, okay, for example, even orange, okay? Scientifically, we have definitions. Maybe, I mean, we don't have scientifically, we have names for every single wavelength, okay? But when it comes to social interactions, what is orange? When does orange stop and yellow begin, right? We don't have a very strict definition for it, but still we use the word orange.
Armin, there is, I'm not sure if you know this, but there is the scientific definition of a tomato is a fruit, and the legal definition of a tomato is a vegetable, because tomato farmers wanted to avoid fruit tariffs or something.
Oh, interesting. See, so definitions could even be different, like from one. I mean, race. We don't have, like, different races. We don't have strict definitions for them. They're completely arbitrary and made up, and they don't even refer to anything that is scientifically consistent. But we still refer to different races.
Yeah, I agree with you on this, right? But in terms of, would you say that anyone who calls themselves a woman, would you consider them as a woman?
Yeah, why not? I mean, there's no cost to me.
So, for example, if you were to call yourself a woman,
mm-hmm.
So let's say, if I was to call myself a woman, would you consider me a woman? I know you never see me, etc., but I've got a big beard, etc. Would you consider me a woman?
Some women have beards.
Yeah, I mean, why not? What's the cost to me? What's the cost to me? I could see you as a woman if it suits you, if that's what you want, and it doesn't take anything away from me. What is the point of me resisting that?
I mean, how would you apply this in reality? So, for example, would someone who has transitioned from from a man into woman as an adult, would you allow them, for example, to compete in sports with women?
No, I think sports shouldn't be based on gender. I think sports should be. I think sports should be eventually turned into categories based on, I don't know, height, weight, bone density, your hormone levels, stuff like that. Because the whole point of making sports based on two genders is because we want it to be competitively fair. Okay, and I think, like, given that we are becoming more accepting of different gender expressions and gender identities, that it would have made sense that sports, if sports was based on sex, maybe it would have made sense. But now, because based on gender, it doesn't make sense anymore. Okay, because it's not going to be fairly cutting people into groups that will make the competition fair. Since originally it was always based on gender, it was never based on sex, right?
Sorry, I completely agree with you on that, Armin, because even under gender, it's still unequal based on race. So, for example, if you look at sprinting, because people of West African origin have higher or more fast twitch muscle fibers, they tend to be significantly faster than any other ethnic group, right?
Okay.
And so if you look at 100-meter races or sprint races, it seems to be dominated by people of one specific ethnic group. So do we now, if we're trying to be fair, should we do sprint races by ethnicity? We could split, you can keep going down that.
Olympics shouldn't be fair. Like, the whole point of Olympics is to see who's the best of the best. The whole premise of the Olympics is
no. To certain yes and no, Asian American. Okay, because if it was only based on if fairness didn't matter at all, we wouldn't be categorizing it into male and female, would it be? To some extent, so that means to some extent we wanted to make it fair, or else we would make it all one category, and men and women would be competing with each other. And if women lost all the time, we would be like, well, tough luck, we're just looking for the best. So we did at some point decided to make it a little bit more fair.
So they had to ban chromosome testing back in, I don't know, I think it was
but
the
at
80s.
least, but do you accept what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
I'm
I
saying,
understand.
like,
Yeah, I understand.
it's not old. It's not like, hey, it's not supposed to be fair. We're looking for the best. The fact that we have two groups means that some fairness was introduced to the system.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay.
I was going to say that back in the day that they banned chromosome testing because a lot of women found out, cisgendered women who were born women and thought that they were quote unquote pure women throughout their entire lives, had like a Y chromosome or had a different types of chromosome variability that wasn't the standard XX.
Yeah. Okay. But my point. Okay. So that's separate from the point here, right? Because if we can agree that we have separate. So here's the thing: it doesn't make sense to separate it by sex. So okay. So because we didn't want to go check everyone's chromosomes. So we separated by gender. Okay. But now that gender is not a good way to make things fair, because we have different forms of, people with expressions of. People who I see with the female gender identity, they might have all the advantages of a male sex based on what the new norms right now. Okay, so gender is not a good way to divide people anymore to make this more fair. Okay, so we have to, if we want to introduce some level of, so we can't remove all level of fairness, because now we have to mix men and women together if we wanted to, and that will make like women's sports completely eradicated, right? So if we want to keep maintaining a categorization of fairness, some level of categorization of fairness, it can't be sex, it can't be gender. So why don't we do something else? So why don't we do, I don't know, just like we do with UFC, when we have body weight, we could do body weight and two other factors. We could say three factors are the only measuring tools, and we could have
levels.
Yeah, we could have 5 categories based on testosterone levels.
But testosterone falls into racial groups. So some racial ethnic groups have higher testosterone levels than other ethnic groups. And so what you're going to have is you'll have all black people in one race, all white people in another race. You'll have all East Asian. So you're just basically doing it by race, essentially, anyway. So
no, you're not. Okay, so yeah, but you could say that about gender as well. But the thing is that we wouldn't just guess based on your ethnicity. Okay, we would guess based on your hormone levels. We will use your hormone levels, and if it happens to be so aligned with ethnicity, so be it. But we didn't use your ethnicity. So, for example, hormone levels also would be so much in line, okay, a lot in line with sex, right? But it's the hormone. But in some odd cases, it wouldn't be. Some, but it would be a hormone.
I think body weight is a far better thingy than testosterone levels.
I don't know. Okay, here's the thing. I'm not saying we should decide right now. Okay, I'm just saying like we could have 4 markers. Okay, 4 or 5 markers to divide people into 5 categories. It would not be their ethnicities, because ethnicity would be a guess, and it will sometimes be wrong. Okay, it would not be gender or sex, because those will also be wrong sometimes. We will actually go to the metrics that directly impact the things that changes your performance, and it's not because of your own practices. Like, so we want to reward people who have done the most, not people who have been the luckiest, right?
I completely agree. I completely agree with you on that. However, the thing is, so for example, sprinting, we do it by the number of fast twitch muscle fibers you have. Then it's likely that the person who has the most fast twitch muscle fibers is going to win the race anyway. So we already know who's kind of, I mean, obviously you have to take into account training, etc. and whatnot, but it's more likely that the person with the most fast twitch muscle fibers in their legs is going to win a race.
Okay, it depends on the sport. It depends on the sport, and it depends on, somebody left. It depends on the sport. And again, I'm pretty sure there's 4 metrics that makes most of the difference, and the other metrics, other things, biological metrics, make like the rest of the 20. So I think like you could focus on the top 3 or the top 4, and the rest of them, like, well, whatever, you got lucky. Okay. I don't know what it is. I think we could just talk to the experts. Yeah, go on.
We can't get too focused on I guess, genetics and racial and ethnic groups because it sounds kind of gross. The other part is Michael Phelps had a genetic advantage in producing half the amount of lactic acid as the average person. Like, are we going to start regulating certain alleles?
That's what
at
I'm
a certain
saying.
point?
That's
like,
what
we
I'm
can't
saying.
do that. Like, that's
Okay,
yeah, I know
so
that is what you're saying, and I'm just providing another example because that's like
I'm
really
saying,
messed up.
Okay, so I already answered that.
Yeah,
we're not going to control for everything.
yeah,
So
I
there
know.
will be some. There will
I'm
be some
agreeing.
element of So there will be some element of luck. Okay, but the major things that that you got because you were lucky by birth or because you injected something in yourself like testosterone in yourself, and it wasn't because of your training, it wasn't because you trained well. Okay, we will eliminate those, the top 3 or top 4. Okay, so that is mostly because of your training. Okay, like a lot of it become because of your training. Okay, but there are certain things that we're not going to control for, and those will still be part of the luck. Sports, okay, people want some luck to also be involved. They don't want everything to be because you trained hard. Okay, they want to be like, oh, you're a superior, you're like a specimen, you're special. Okay, they want to root for that as well. Okay, so we will allow for some of that as well. Okay, but the main ones will take that out, so to make it somewhat fair. Okay, so it could be bone density, I don't know, fast muscle, fast twitch muscles, okay, and body weight and testosterone levels. It could be just 4. Okay, everything else, if you have a genetical advantage, well, okay, fine, you could win because of that. We're not going to control for that because you got lucky. Okay, so but these 4 we will control for. I think that we could have 5 categories, and people will be assigned to group A, B, C, D, or F accordingly. I think that's the best answer.
So I definitely agree with that. I just find it a bit hypocritical that a lot of the conversations we have about this is about, oh, trans women are beating cis women in sports. That's terrible. But we don't talk about the pay discrepancies that female athletes get compared to their male counterparts. And we also don't
they
talk
should
about...
be... Wait, they should get paid less. I'm in favor of them getting paid less. Is that bad?
I mean, how much less are we talking about?
A lot less. A fraction. No, they should get paid like so much less than men.
Why?
Because they're useless.
What?
Oh, sorry. I'm just making a sarky comment. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, because they bring less customers. What do you want me to do? Pay them more for less of a revenue?
I mean, it kind of sounds like trans women are shooting themselves in the foot by transitioning and getting a huge pay cut.
No, because you could get more money from being the top of... So you're talking about the averages? Because if you are like an low performing on men's sport, you're making less than if you're the top of the women's sport. So on average, are you talking about averages? Or you're talking about individuals? Well, averages, women should be getting a lot less than men because less people watch women's sport. Why should they get paid more for less of an... We want equal opportunity. We don't want the equal outcome. If you're not bringing in the views, why should you get paid? Like your entire industry is making less money.
Fuck the industry. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, do you know what I want to see? I want to see men fighting women in the UFC. That would be epic for entertainment value purposes. What do you think?
That's abusive. I don't know.
Well, there was this one trans woman, an African American. Not that matters, but you might know who she is. But she transitioned into a female and then started fighting in the UFC. So she transitioned as an adult in her 20s. And she was beating the living daylights out of all of her opponents. But then once she came up against someone who was technically proficient, she got destroyed, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think that goes to show that the technical aspect of sports is just as important, or might be as important as strength, etc., bone density and whatnot. And I think that that's a great illustration as to how you can have someone who is a man who has transitioned into a woman, and then still not be able to compete at the highest level against women who are basically technically proficient at the sport.
Yeah,
I don't.
You're going.
I don't think that it could be divorced from the fact that, so she's a black woman. Sorry, a black trans woman who beat the living daylights out of a bunch of, I'm assuming, white cis women. Is that what was happening at first?
It was a mixture of Hispanic and white, but some Hispanics are considered white these days. So in America.
Okay, so okay, sorry, my SJW Mujahideen training is kind of kicking in a little bit because
Payback.
no, because when I was in college, it was kind of pointed out to me a lot of times how black women are defeminized and made overly masculine, and how black men are seen as aggressive and are after your women. And this story is kind of just, I'm not saying this story was like, played into it. I'm just saying that it has echoes of that. Like, we don't get to see white trans women going to the field and getting their asses beat by other cis women. Those stories don't make it to the headlines. It's always the one exceptional trans woman that, like, they'll only report the stories of one trans woman beating the cis woman, and then not the other way around.
That's true. I do agree with you on that. And it was Joe Rogan who was pushing this narrative. So this, in this instance, that story got out to millions upon millions of people, and that person was lambasted. And I think from then on, they've banned trans women from competing in women's contests within the UFC. So Joe Rogan, the impact of him, having that on his show, has had a real impact on trans people within the sport.
By the way, guys, I really do think that trans women in sports is such a small thing compared to trans rights as a whole. Okay, and I think that I think this is just a tool used by, like, it's an interesting discussion to talk about biology, gender, sex. It's an interesting discussion, but we have to be careful not to fall into what this discussion is truly about. This is like a very, very few number of people's lives and the inconsistency in rules being highlighted to determine the true gender identity of a much, much larger number of people. Like, obviously, when you're going through such a major shift in mindset through society, there's going to be odd cases where things are not going to make sense. Okay. And sports happens to be the thing here. But highlighting that is giving people the impression that the whole thing is a lost cause and it's ridiculous as a whole. Okay. And that's the reason. I mean, you shouldn't be expecting anything else. Like, obviously there's going to be, we're going through a completely shift in perspective on something that we understood in society. Obviously you shouldn't expect not there to be odd cases. Okay. But fixating on that as the expense of what the discussion truly is about is like something that right-leaning right-leaning bigots are trying to do. So don't let them win this.
Yeah, and if you compare it to 15 years ago, trans rights were non-existent. People knew nothing about trans people, almost nothing about trans people. And you see how far we've progressed since then. I think it's unbelievable. Like even gay marriage 15 years ago, like 20 years ago, people weren't even talking about it. So, and we've seen how far that's considered the norm now. Even Barack Obama was against gay marriage when he was elected to power. Now, even the Republicans, large proportion of them are supportive of gay marriage. So we can see the shift in perspective from ordinary people in terms of gay rights, first of all, and also I think in terms of trans rights, although there's the pushback in last, say, 2 years, especially in the UK where the TERF community seems to have a big voice, there seems to be a pushback against the trans community, but I think in the end we will overcome.
Yeah. I mean, if we have to go through some women who deserve to be if a handful of women who deserve to be first place, and are not first place now because of this, if we have to pay that price for the whole issue of people a large number of people who are suffering through gender dysphoria to be accepted through society, if that's the periodic price that we have to pay, I think like society should pay that price. I mean, I rather care about the oppression, discrimination, and sometimes violence against all the transgenders in the world than worrying about, I don't know how many people that were first place. And I mean, I'm sorry, okay, it was unfair to you, okay, but again, this is a much smaller price that we have to pay.
I agree. It's way better to incorporate them into members of the economy and increase our tax base.
Well, that's, oh my God, Asian American, you're like
that is how you sell it to Republicans.
Jesus Christ. Like, I'm talking about human rights. I'm like, yes, they're productive members of the economy. They're like,
Armin, this is how you sell it to American Republicans, okay?
Okay. Right.
Right, I'm going to be heading off, mate. I'm going to be heading off now. Just before I go, I just want to ask: is the debate with Oxymoron, is it still on for the 22nd, or is it been changed? Or
Well, I mean, it's self for me. I could send the clarifying email asking to confirm it, because for me it's still the same. So I could ask if for you it's the same, for me it's the same. Let's see if Oxymoron. He said he needs a shorter notice.
Cool. No worries. Thank you very much for having this conversation. Also, thanks to Asian American. It's always a pleasure speaking with you as well. But yeah, I'm going to head out and I'll speak to you next time. Oh yeah, next time you have your secular jihadist thingy, remember I'm going to still bring up the the Ganan thingy. Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. Cheers. Okay. All right. Nice one. Safe. Right. Safe.
So I have one quick question, if you don't mind answering.
Go ahead.
So this is kind of in relation to the trans stuff we were talking about earlier. So
your audio just got roboty, but go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So Starbucks health insurance covers transitioning.
Oh wow.
But because of the recent sweep of union formations across Starbucks chains, they will begin to withhold transition coverage if the
okay, so your audio is very bad. All of a sudden it was really good. I don't know what happened. So you're saying Starbucks covers transition? Okay. Oh, good, better now.
Can you hear me better now? Okay.
Yes.
Starbucks health insurance covers transitioning, but because of the recent sweep of unions, like people voting to create a union and the union being created, they said they will withhold health insurance to cover the trans person if they join a union. And I was just wondering.
Okay, your audio is breaking up for me again. I don't know what happened. But you're saying the unions are moving against Starbucks coverage of transition? Is that what you're saying?
No. Starbucks is going to withhold the transition coverage if the trans person joins a union.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's crazy. Okay.
I was just wondering what your thoughts on it.
I don't know. That's kind of crazy. That's so. This is the economical left is going to be put against the social issues left now. What is more important? Why are they doing this? That seems like a political. That seems like a social suicide. Like, wouldn't that be like, hey, we're gonna punish trans people for joining unions? Like, wouldn't that be a PR nightmare? Why would they do that? That doesn't seem right. That doesn't seem like somebody, a professional in the PR department would suggest.
I think because a lot of trans people, they join Starbucks for a while.
Is it just that, or they're just removing a whole bunch of benefits, and that's just include one of them? So I think what might have happened, if I have to guess, is that Starbucks is saying if you join unions, we're going to just remove certain benefits, okay? And that was one of them. And to paint Starbucks as anti-trans, people are fixating on that one thing. Is that possible? You're muted.
That is definitely a possibility.
Okay, so that's my guess. Let's gamble on it. Okay, my gamble is like Starbucks is not like no transfer coverage for you trans people if you join a union. My guess is that Starbucks would not do something like that because that would be very crazy. That would be like make Starbucks look really bad in media. My guess is like they just removed a whole bunch of privileges or a whole bunch of things that they were giving to their employees. Not privileges, a whole bunch of benefits that they were giving to their employees if they joined. And because this was part of one of those many other things, some people were like, "Oh my God, I know how to make Starbucks look evil by doing this." That would be my
yeah. There's two different sides to this. One is the union side, and the unions are saying they're threatening to withhold gender-affirming coverage, and the Starbucks side, which is we're not doing this at all.
Okay, yeah, I wouldn't. If I don't know if this is true, but if I had to guess, this is not true at all because that would be. I mean, Starbucks. The people working at Starbucks, the PR department, they would know better to do something like this. You know what I mean? That would be. I mean, at this day and age, you can't do something like that. To specifically be like, we're going to specifically punish trans people for joining a union. That's like,
that does sound really cartoonishly evil.
Yeah, it sounds cartoonishly evil. So again, it might be true because things like even things that are cartoonishly evil sometimes do happen. But if I had to guess, I would say like somebody's misrepresenting what's happening.
All right, I'm signing off because it's 2 a.m. where I am tonight. So okay. Good night.
All right, good night. All right, guys, I'm going to end the stream as well. Guys, please like the stream. If you want to ask your questions for future Q&As, please become a patron. Or if you want to join live on air and ask your questions live on air, consider becoming a YouTube member. Link to both is in the description. Thank you all. And Susie, hopefully we'll be back here next week. See you guys later. Bye.